but away we go, and I think there's a jump start for Jared Filsell further back, but away we go then, and it is Sebastian Job who takes the lead ahead of Graham Carroll, and Jeremy Bootloop slotting into third place yet again. Great jump there from Joshua Rodgers to get himself up into fourth place ahead of Alejandro Sanchez, and it's going to be De Jong trying to put the pressure on. Will everybody make it through this time? They did the first race. Let's see if they do. Well, Dion Vergers has a little incident further back, so he's caught up in something there. But drivers coming through, and still it's De Jong and Sanchez working together, trying to make the moves, and De Jong trying to make the move on his teammate now. Not quite going to be alongside enough there, so it's going to be ahead of Sanchez, and Benecke looking to make the pass on Patrick Holtzman behind these as well. Great early action. The front three are making a little bit of a breakaway of it, and they need to take the opportunity while they can to get that gap out at the front, because the rest of them are behind now and wanting to get through. Too wide further down your field. That classic shot, the camera shot through Cop's corner. And these drivers, they're going at it hammer and tongs, that's for sure, throughout this field. But Connery, great start there from Rodgers to get the jump on Sanchez early on. But I do believe there was a jump start for Jared Filsell in that.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see whether he comes down onto the pit lane within the next 3 laps or not. So we don't have any immediate confirmation of that, but that's exactly what he'll have to do if he has gotten himself a jump start here. But riding on the back of Sebastian Job here, you can see that view back to his teammate. That's exactly what he wants to see here. Carroll likely not to be too aggressive with him when it comes to an attempted pass, and I've already said about how you need to be aggressive here to even be able to make passes, and you were absolutely right, Paul. That is a jump start if I ever saw one for Sol.
Yep, so Filsell having to take the long trek through pit lane. Interestingly though, that pit entry is actually shorter on the track across the start and finish line. I'm sure iRacing officials will be keeping an eye on that towards the end of the race in case somebody tries that on the last lap. But yeah, he's dropping down the order then as he has to go at pit lane speed limit. So the rest of the field now working through. Benecke in 8th place. He is trying to get ahead of Patrick Holtzman. He's got Tommy Erstgaard behind him as well. And look further back as there's a slow moving number 18. That's Antoine Hugelap. He's dropping down the order as well. Jamie Fluke, look at this, great start from Fluke. He started down in 27th. He's up to 17th already. He's a man on a mission here, Connery.
Yeah, he is, and doing an absolutely fantastic job so far in this one. He had a little bit of a look over Marcus Jensen over the previous couple of corners, but wasn't able to do anything when it comes to getting ahead of that number 12 car. So the status quo right now will be maintained. Meanwhile, we do have Thomas Tetala here a little bit further back, currently trying to defend from Marti Piatella. So it's the battle of the Finns on the way down to Maggots and Beckett, but we'll have a little bit of a look further forward towards the front of your field. It's 2 Red Bull Racing Esports, then of course 3 VRS Co-Anderson Sports. Josh Rodgers going to be trying to file his way through on his French teammate of Jeremy Bootloop here, but as we've already mentioned, no team orders at Coanda. They're free to fight this one out unless Bootloop decides to let Josh Rodgers through regardless. But down in towards what is going to be the Vale chicane here, and then up towards Club Corner. Everyone's still stacked together right at the front of this field here, and now is the question that if Jeremy Bootloop does have the pace here, maybe to have a little bit of a go at Graham Carroll, Joshua Rodgers' job is basically just to follow through behind in the tyre tracks of his teammate.
We've had reports of Martin Cronkite making contact with Kevin Ellis Jr. You've also had Jamie Fluke has dropped back down the order. He's down to 27th, 26th now, so absolute nightmare for him down at Stowe Corner. Looking on my timing screen, but we've been keeping an eye on this battling that's going on, and you can just see how dictating the speed, slowing down on the apex there, allows Alejandro Sanchez to get the better run on the exit of the loop there to carry the speed down into Brooklands. And we've got side by side as well. A little bit of door rubbing going on up in front. You can just see it off camera, but those two battling it out, Carroll and Bootloop. And well, Rodgers is trying to get involved in this, and all the while Sebastian Job is trying to make a breakaway here. But while these battle away, this is giving the leader the perfect opportunity to pull away. Carroll a little wide, a little drift away from the apex of Copse Corner. Here comes Bootloop then, coming towards Maggots. Will they go side by side? Yes, they will. Into Beckett's now, and it's going to be three wide. And look at that, a VRS Quanda Sim Sport sandwich there. And well, Graham Carroll, he only loses one place in the end there, but my goodness, this is a close action here. But Carroll, he's not over yet. He's got a good run out of Chapel. They're going to Dorbank down the hanger straight. Come on, guys, it's a straight line down there in towards Stowe once again, trying to use the side draft.
Big shot.
Slow on the mid corner of Stowe Corner, and now the lights are flashing from Bootloop. Carroll's ahead once again. Here comes Josh Rodgers, and the rest of the field has decided to join in the party. Josh Rodgers down the inside is going to get the move done on his teammate Jeremy Bootloop. So the Australian is up to third place now, and finally they all get themselves into a line, Connery.
Yeah, absolutely. What a crazy sequence, and it seems to continue there, at least in the back of the shot on the way down towards Copse Corner. We'll get the replay up for you here. Just that whole sort of fracas in and amongst your podium positions. This committed move from Jeremy Bootloop. I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times already, but it's simply what you have to do if you're going to make passes here. What a pass from Jeremy Bootloop it was as well. Inside for Maggots and into Beckett's around the outside. That is absolutely brilliant. That must be in the highlights reel for the end of the season.
Oh, it has to be, that's for sure. That is breathtaking driving, and it was aggressive, but it was fair in the end. That's the important thing there. What it has allowed is it's allowed Sebastian Job to pull away 2 seconds. The Englishman ahead of the Scotsman. No, that isn't the start of a joke. That is the lead of your field, with Josh Rodgers now putting the pressure on Graham Carroll into Copse Corner as they go through there now. And Rodgers, he'll want to try and get past Graham here. He'll feel that he's faster than the Scotsman. And into Maggots and Beckett's a go. He's putting the pressure on, and we've still got 22 minutes left in this race, so plenty that could happen in this one yet. And we saw what happened in that first sprint race earlier on. It certainly provided great entertainment, and this is certainly doing the same again. Down the hanger straight, using the slipstream. It's not the strongest slipstream from this car. Around the outside at Stowe. Can Rodgers hold it out there? If he keeps it out there, he's got the inside for Vale. They give each other room, which is good to see. Onto the brakes for Vale, and still Carroll around the outside. If he holds the outside, he's got the inside for Club, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. Keep it on the inside there, use the position, the track position. Oh, Rodgers from wide, a little wiggle there from Carroll, but still they're on track together into Abbey once again, and a little touch between the two of them. Rodgers runs out wide. Carroll's going to keep the position. Here comes Bootloop now. He's made it back, and Rodgers must have either some damage or a slowdown penalty there.
Yeah, that was Graham Carroll just getting a huge slap of oversteer coming out of Club Corner. You'll see it on your screen for you now. We're on board with Joshua Rodgers. You can see, there we go. There's the first bit of contact between the two of them. And then on the way down through the first corner, Rodgers gets a little bit of a tap to the rear end as well. And that just sends him towards the outside of the circuit, and then has to lose so many positions here. It actually puts Maximilian Benecke what is going to be 3 positions ahead of him. You can see that little bit. There's not much in it between the two of them, but enough so that Rodgers has to push oh so wide. And of course, we do have the damage situation with regards to that car as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on how he does throughout the rest of this 20 minutes that this race has remaining. There's still a quite tight action further back through the field, though, as we can see Rodgers trying to make up positions almost immediately after that bit of an incident. Alejandro Sanchez is the first target on the list. We're riding on board Patrick Holtzman, who's getting a little bit boisterous with Jack Cedric as well. So everyone here stacked up inside of your top 10. Only Sebastian Job is the one that's been able to get away at the front of the field with a 2.7 second gap. Everyone else as close as you like. Here comes Cedric then over Joshua Rodgers. Inside line for Stowe Corner. Has to commit from this far back, but decides against it and files back in line. But there's Joshua Rodgers pushing wide. He has damage to that car, I suspect. It's not behaving in all of the right ways. And now Cedric can look to capitalize in towards the chicane. And now Patrick Holtzman takes that as an opportunity to make his presence known through Vale, but he's not able to complete the pass. And instead, Gregor Hutu will take this as an opportunistic move through Club, but he goes for a spin. And that is Hutu losing a ton of positions.
He's done well to keep that out the wall, it must be said. So well done, Gregor. But that's dropping him all the way down your field here. And absolute nightmare for the number 66. Down to 25th in the end after that spin there. But that battle, that was second place through to about 12th place at the moment, is how close that is in that front pack. But it's exactly what Sebastian Job, the Englishman, wants at the front. He wants them to be battling here because it's slowing each other down. They're tripping each other up, and it's giving him the opportunity to just pull away. Sebastian Job, don't forget, is still in with a chance of the championship. You know, he's within 150 points of the championship lead going into this this week races. So he's got the opportunity still there, but he needs to score some really good race results, and that's what exactly he's doing right now. But still, we see this battle for second place. Carroll, Bootloop, De Jong, Benecke and Tommy Østgaard not that far behind those four either.
Yeah, not too much of a gap at all. We are, well, we were briefly riding on board with Jeremy Bootloop there. That's first Coanda car in line. And everyone else just completely and utterly stacked up behind this Red Bull Racing Esports car of Graham Carroll. And he's giving his teammates a huge advantage here at the front of the field. Gap from P1, P2, that is 3.4 seconds. And Jeremy Bootloop well aware of that fact as he decides to try his way around the outside at Stowe Corner, but going to be unsuccessful in this instance. Puts him under threat from Mitchell de Jong. Here comes Benecke then, outside line for the first part of Vale, over the VRS Cranston Sport car of Mitchell de Jong, and now Benecke will have the inside line for the final quarter of Club. But look at the speed that de Jong has on the outside line, completely obliterates him off the corner. And here comes Østgaard then, inside line for the first corner, and he's just going to be able to make it work. He has the momentum, bit of door rubbing off the corner, but he has to concede. Benecke, very, very good try, but he ends up losing a position instead of gaining one.
Yeah, absolutely. I said this was going to be an absolute belter this week, and it's proving to be such because these drivers are giving us one heck of a show. Benecke, though, I feel is doing the right thing, taking the outside line into Vale, because if you hold it around the outside, you've got the inside for Club and then for Abbey, but he didn't carry as much speed as he would have liked to, and that's why Tommy Østgaard was able to get up alongside him in that one. But still, we look at Jack Cedric, and Patrick Holtzman. Through the field they go, and Cedric is putting the pressure on Patrick Holtzman. 9th and 10th place, these two. Cedric, the man from the UK, against the German. Into Cop's corner, should I say. And round they go. One thing with this circuit as well, it does give you a little bit of breathing room on corner exits, unlike, say, at Watkins Glen, which was pretty much barriers up to the side of the track. You look at the wide expanses of the runoff here. It certainly is giving these drivers the opportunity to be a little bit more brave than they would have been, say, last time out.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy Bootloop, though, again angling for a move perhaps into towards Stoke corner. Graham Carroll actually very defensive very early on, so very petrified of what the Frenchman has to offer in this one. And now on the way down to Vale, again a defensive line from Carroll. You can just see his mentality here, how he's going to approach the rest of this race. It's just defend, 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 and it seems to be working right now, but I don't think it'll work forever, especially with how feisty some of these drivers are behind them. So coming across the line onto lap number 8 here through turn 1 once again. You can see the stream of cars heading their way by here. Everyone's still standing together. It's what we usually get to see here in the Porsche Esports Super Cup, and it brings action exactly like this. There's the tail end of the field just coming up right about now, and then there is your train for your final 2 podium positions. Carroll still holding strong at the front of this one, but that is no guarantee for the end of this race, especially when you have to defend all of the time for about 15 minutes.
We're halfway through the feature race here in the Porsche Esports Super Cup from Silverstone, and the race leader is Sebastian Job. He is now 5 seconds ahead of the rest of the field because, and I say the rest of the field because they're all battling together. Josh Rodgers is going side by side at the moment with Tommy Erstgaard. Those two battling it out. They may be teammates in terms of teams, but right now they are enemies as they head into Copse Corner. And still Rodgers holding that outside line. Carry the speed around that outside line. You're always going to be compromised when you're on the inside line going side by side, and that's Rodgers through into Maggot's upper position into 6th place. So it is Sebastian Job in the lead. Graham Carroll still in 2nd place ahead of Jeremy Bootloop in 3rd. Mitchell de Jong 4th with Maximilian Benecke 5th, and there's just a little gap back to Josh Rodgers, Tommy Erstgaard and Alejandro Sanchez rounds out your top 8, with Patrick Holtzman and Jack Sedgwick still together in 9th and 10th place. So that's how the field stacks at the moment, but still battling throughout the field. We've been focusing so much at the front, we've not really had time to look further down. Marcus Jensen, Moritz Lerner and Marty Piatella, they're battling it out at the moment, and they are swapping positions down at Stoke Corner. Well, they're going to go side by side in towards the Vale. And Moritz Lerner for that Williams Esports car, the German, around the outside of the fin. That turns into the inside, and he's going to get the job done through Club Corner. So that's a nice move, but it does leave him susceptible to the run out of Club. But right now, it's position gained there for Moritz against Martin Piatella as they swap positions.
Very well worked move there. A little bit of jostling for position behind as well. That was Marin Cholak and Thomas Titala who were trying to get themselves involved in this one. And Cholak, again, a very aggressive line off of what is going to be coming through the loop through Aintree, and then, of course, down through the Wellington Straight as well. And then look for your breaking point into Brooklands Corner, the left-hander, but not going to be any more swaps of position in this one. Meanwhile, further back, there might just be an altercation. There's a big altercation. Zelensky right into back of Hishlan.
Yeah, and that can happen there at Brooklands. You can take 2 lines through there, but they do end up going in towards one, and Hishlan, I think, has decided that that is his day done, and he is out of the race. We'll have a look at the replay again, and it's the run down the Wellington Straight. Bobby did get the slipstream, and he did look for the late move, but really, there was room there, but it was Hishlan was just trail braking through the corner, and it all just came together then in the end. So disappointing end for Antoine, but we're back now to live pictures, and it is still this battle for 2nd place and now 3rd place, because Mitchell de Jong, he's looking like he's wanting to make some moves now on the Frenchman Jeremy Bootloop. So it's Frenchman Bootloop, the American Mitchell de Jong, and Maximilian Benecke, the German, as they go through that final corner again, with the Australian Joshua Rodgers not that far behind. What a truly world championship this is, as we go through once again into Abbey and then into Farm. And Marin Cholak, big spin for him at Club Corner.
Catches
Got
one
it
of the
back up
Orion
and
cars there.
running. Oh yeah, that's not the best rejoin from him there. He won't be proud
Oh,
of
big
that.
incident at the front of the field, Paul.
Yes,
oh,
huge.
that's huge. That is absolutely huge. There's a car on his side. That's Mitchell de Jong. Tommy Istgaard's also involved in this one for VRS Coranda Simsport. We'll have to cycle that one back to try and find a replay, but that's Maximilian Benecke running straight into the back of de Jong, spins him across the corner, and it collects a good couple of cars in the process as well. That is huge.
Yeah, it certainly is. We've seen it on the replay. So contact between de Jong and Benecke. There was also the number 1 car of Tommy Istgaard was the one that actually went and flipped de Jong onto his side. So championship contender de Jong, 3rd place going into this week's and championship, and that means that there's going to be changes, but we've seen the replay a few times there. Benecke, though, that did cost him a few positions, and one of those crucially to the championship leader, Joshua Rodgers. So Rodgers now up to 4th ahead of Max Benecke in 5th place still, but big drama, and it's what can happen there into the loop. It's such a slow section of the track as that, and it all concertinas together, and that's exactly what's happened there, Connery.
Yeah, I was just about, when I took back the commentary there after you describing the action, I was going to say, oh, Joshua Rodgers, Maximilian Benecke, they're on the same bit of real estate here, so we might have P1 and 2 in the championship having a little bit of a battle, but oh, how quickly things change there as Benecke decides to run into the back of Mitchell instead. Now, as a result, it does mean that Rodgers has been able to get himself 1 position ahead of Benecke instead of 1 position behind, and that may be very, very crucial, especially considering how close that championship situation is right at the front of the standings. But meanwhile, P2 in your race here today, that seems to be a question mark as well, as Graham Carroll, he's put up an absolutely brilliant defense over the entirety of the racing that we've had here in this main race so far. Needs to keep it up for another around about 9 minutes, and he can come home in P2 and bag a decent amount of cash for finishing there as well. Not as much as the race win being $1,000, but still a good payday. But Jeremy Bootloop will try and wrestle that one away from him.
Yeah, he won't give this one up without a fight, that's for sure. And Josh Rodgers still hanging around now behind Bootloop. So Jeremy's lost 1 teammate who was hounding him. He's been replaced with another one, and it's Josh Rodgers, your championship leader, trying to get a really decent haul of points here today, and it's certainly panning out for him in this one, because he is ahead of Benecke, and that's going to help his championship. But look at that lead that Sebastian Job has got there. 6 seconds. That's right, you heard me right. 6 seconds is your race lead ahead of Graham Carroll, and you can see the lap gaps between them, lap upon lap.
Huge.
You're talking quarter up to half a second per lap, and that's all because Graham Carroll has had to be defending from that train of cars. Was now got down to 3 cars, but is still defending here, and he's still doing a really good job of keeping this car in second place. Even though it's a big wide track here, it's showing you can defend around here.
Yeah, he's having to take very shallow lines into each of these corners to try and cover off any moves. You can see how Bootloop can bring it up to the rear bumper all he wants, but he can't find a space to make his way by, and perhaps until now, because there's an opportunity here down into Vale, but Graham Carroll just parks it right in the middle of the racetrack, and now Bootloop harassing his back bumper. He's fed up and over goes that Red Bull Racing Esports driver of Carroll, and actually Rodgers is collected in that one, so he might just fall back. He's already fallen back behind Benecke.
Yeah, it's whether he's got even more damage now on his car. Carroll's going to have huge damage, and the red mist will have descended there for him. Jeremy Bootloop, I think, was just getting a little bit desperate there and ended up making contact. We'll have a look on the replay again, but I do believe that is on Jeremy, is that not taking into account that Graham was going to be slower on the apex, and he just pushed him out the way, did Jeremy. That's not the best from him, I do have to say, but all of this means that now Max Benecke is ahead of Josh Rodgers in second place now, rather than further down the field. So Josh Rodgers, he finds himself once again behind his championship competitor, and this is just going to keep on going and going and going.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be the case. So Sebastian Job, he has about a country mile at the front of the field. There's another Red Bull Racing Esports driver. That's Carroll again, so he's struggling with the damage to that car. on the brakes, coming through Brooklands and, well, coming up towards Luffield. It all seems to be rather okay, albeit slow. But then just a lazy drift out and loops the car around. That car is in arguably no fit state to continue, although try as he might. But still, we do have battles that are going on. There's still, believe it or not, a bit of a stack up for P2 here. This time it's Maximilian Benecke out of nowhere after that big incident up into P2 ahead of his championship rival of Joshua Rodgers. Even if he finishes in this configuration, I don't think he'll be able to take the championship lead coming into the next race, but it will be still a very, very close gap heading into the next event. But Joshua Rodgers will make sure that that gap isn't too bad, as he might still have some fight left in that car, Paul, especially with him bringing it up to the bumper of that Pure Racing Team driver. They will be very close to heading their way across the line here. Rodgers angling, perhaps body language suggests a move is imminent here for the Australian, but it's about when and where.
So I'm just looking at the points for the championship between the sprint race and where they finished in the sprint race and where they currently are. They would be in exactly the same position as where they were coming into this round in terms of the sprint race and the feature race. That's not taken into account qualifying because Josh Rodgers did, of course, set the fastest time. So yeah. It's pretty close between the two of them, and Josh is trying to make the move on Benecke. It's not going to happen at the moment, but Josh, I believe, would gain 2 points on him if they stay as they are. That's how close this championship is. It's fantastic to see, and it's always great to have everyone here along watching us here on the iRacing Esports network across YouTube, Twitch and Facebook for the Porsche Esports Supercup. And well, we're into the final 4 minutes of this race, and I tell you what, Connery, we're going to be breathless. We're going to have no voice by the end of this one. What can they bring us next now?
Joshua Rodgers' move for P2 against his main championship rival. That may potentially be the thing for the end of this race, as they had their way out of Maggots and Beckett's and Chapel as well. And now down the hangar straight then, Rodgers has the slipstream, but does he commit to a move? He forces Benecke to go defensive into Stowe, so Rodgers can try a little bit of a cutback move here. Wide on entry, cut back in for the exit, get the rod off the corner. He seems to have the speed here. Benecke trying to find a line to try and defend this one from, as Rodgers tries around the outside at the Vale chicane, has to duck back in line, and they will be line astern for Club. But this is not going to be over unless one of these drivers has a little bit of a bow before the end of this race. About 3 minutes to go as they head their way across the line into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. This all battling it out for second place, and Patrick Holtzman and Jack Sedgwick just waiting in the wings, waiting for any opportunity. If these two trip over each other, and we've seen a few trip over each other in this race, then they are waiting for that opportunity to get a really good result here in today's race. But these two, they're going at it hammer and tongs, but they're going at it pretty clean so far. Will the gloves come off as we head into the final portion and the final laps of the race here? Time is running out, so this should be the penultimate lap here in this particular race. So what an event it has been. Silverstone producing great racing as we expected, and Rodgers taking that different line through Luffield, but it does mean that Benecke gets on the power a little bit earlier because he V's out at Luffield, coming through Woodcut, making liberal use of the track limits through Woodcut, it must be said, and then into Copse Corner. These drivers absolutely on the limit, and Rodgers, look at the run that he got through Copse Corner. If he could get the overlap through Maggots into Beckett's, no he can't. He has to just get out of it just that little bit, but look at how close those two are running as they're going through Beckett's. Rodgers seems to get the better run out of Chapel though compared to Benecke. He's been doing it the last couple of times, and here we go go then. Slipstream down the hanger straight. Patrick Holtzman, he's trying to get a little bit of clear air, see what's going on in front. He's trying to make the most of this. Rodgers, late move to the inside of Stowe. Benecke gives the space there. He didn't have to do that, but he realised for the championship that was crucial not to end up in an accident. Benecke, better speed out of Stowe into Vale, and he's going to hold on to that position as they start the final lap of this race. But Rodgers is not giving this one up.
No, he's not. This is the last ditch attempt now. White flag out there. Last lap pass has to be required here for Joshua Rodgers if he's going to finish any further up the podium than he is right now. Benecke has a huge defensive job to do here up in towards what's going to be Village Corner. No opportunity for Rodgers to head his way through there. Benecke parked it in the middle of the circuit. Here comes the aggressive move then up through the loop for Joshua Rodgers, but it's not going to happen still as they head their way through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. Then this might be the opportunity for Rodgers. He has a very good run. Defensive instantly from the German, and now the Australian around the outside, perhaps in towards Brooklands. Not going to commit to it just yet, just has to follow in line. Hope Benecke's made a mistake and outbreaks himself into here, but he seems to be perfect. But there's the mistake, and now Rodgers can head his way on the inside here of Luffield Corner, and now up towards Woodcote. Across the old start-finish line they go. Rodgers inside line for Cops Corner, but Benecke is going to fight for all he's worth here on this outside line. Neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Rodgers inside line. Does he track out here? Just a little bit, but he'll continue the battle for P2 on the way down through Maggots and Beckett's.
Yeah, they're going to try it out, and well, Benecke's going to stay ahead then into Maggots and Beckett's then. He's managed to hold on to it. We'll keep an eye. Sebastian Job is out in the lead. He's nearly coming to the end of this one, but we'll keep an eye on this battle for the time being as they come down the hanger straight for the final time. This is the final opportunity. It's going to be desperation, is it? Or is it going to be glory? Down into Stowe to the outside, and he's not going to make the move, but for the time being, look to the front because Sebastian Job, he won the sprint race earlier on. He's coming across the line to win the feature race here in the Porsche Esports Super Cup. What a victory! Double victory, Sebastian Job. Here comes second place now. Who's going to get it? Benecke is going to get it across the line. Rodgers clipped the curb. That slowed him down, and he finishes in third place. What a run between those drivers towards the end there. Fantastic driving between them. The battling between them was absolutely epic, and my goodness, what a run. Here it is again on replay. You can see how he tries to get the cut back. He gets a little nose in on the inside of Club Corner. Benecke squeezed him, which sent him over the curb, and that's it. Across the line, Benecke in second place. What a finish to that race.
This is the original eSport racing game. This is iRacing.
Sim racers. $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive iRacing World Championship. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Supercup.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a dark and gloomy Nurburgring here for the Porsche Esports Supercup. Drivers are currently under practice conditions, and well, we've had ourselves a heat wave here in Europe, and now things have got itself a little bit cooler, but the action will still be hot here today, especially in terms of the championship battle. Let's have a look here at your standings heading into this event as you welcome me here on Esports TV and on the iRacing Esports Network. Will Vincent, Paul Smith and Conor Maddock will join you shortly. Let's look at the standings. Joshua Rodgers, 667 points after his effort last time out at Silverstone. Max Benecke is 9 points back. Mitchell de Jong in third place. Sebastian Job in fourth place, 109 points back after that double victory last time out. Patrick Holtzman rounds out your top five. Well, Paul, just a little quick point I want to make here. We've got ourselves three drivers in the top 10 who are from the United Kingdom. Sebastian Job and Jamie Fluke have themselves a United Kingdom flag, but Indy Ref 2 seems to be starting up because Graham Carroll has a Scottish flag.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. If that's the case, then Jamie Fluke should surely have the flag that Northern Ireland uses for himself. But yeah, there we go. That's what's happening. We're already declaring independence from the Scottish here today on the iRacing Esports Network. So that's news to us, isn't it?
It is. But let's get serious for a second. And Joshua Rodgers, we say, is leading this championship right now. And we've done some maths in. This is a look at Rodgers' position over the last races in this season. Of course, round number 8 of 10 here today. Rodgers started off so well, Connery. Had a dip, though, in rounds number 5 and 6. That allowed the championship to kind of close up. We're showing the main feature race results there of Joshua Rodgers. But I'm going to put a second graphic up now. And this has got Sebastian Job. And you can see that he had a dip in rounds 4 and 5, but the last 2 races, he has been on fire.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the double victory in terms of the sprint race and the main race last time out at Silverstone. And even in the race before that, it was a P2 in the main race. So he's been hauling all the points over the last couple of rounds. Hopefully for him, that's a trend that's going to continue coming into the final 3 rounds, of this season. And in the practice session that we've been watching in the background here, well, he's been very, very quick as well. Not too far off of Joshua Rodgers' pace, so it might be a straight-up fight between these two for this one.
Yeah, and we're actually having a look on board Sebastian Job right now in that Red Bull Racing Esports car, and he's very close in terms of qualifying, in terms of practice even. But Josh Rodgers, he's had himself a good run here today as well. He's topped those timing stands. The key thing that we do need to talk about though here today is the fact though that 2 drivers will not be taking part in qualifying, and they're big names here, Paul. They are both Max Benecke and also the driver of Graham Carroll.
Yeah, both drivers in the top 10 of the championship. More importantly, for Max Benecke, he's something of a specialist around the Nurburgring. He's second in the championship. Now, we saw how Josh Rodgers got affected by a qualifying ban back at Mossport, and that's where we saw the first of his dips in performance in this championship. Is this going to be a huge hindrance, or are we going to see a rise like the phoenix from the ashes? Max Benecke coming through the field here today. It's going to be interesting to see how he copes with it. There are overtaking opportunities around here, but it is tough to overtake around here.
It is. And of course, it is very easy, shall we say, to make a dive bomb down at turn number 1, turn number 2. But Connery, we talked about this yesterday. One of the important things to note is if you do get more incidents, and again, you have 2 incidents here today, and you've already had yourself a qualifying ban, you get race suspension, and you don't want to have that. So both Benecke and Carroll will have to drive conservatively aggressive races, shall we say.
Yeah, they do have to be very, very careful because, as you quite rightfully mentioned, the last thing you want in the final 3 rounds of a championship is to get yourself a race suspension. That's basically any decent prize in the championship just being ripped out of your hands at that point. So you do have to be very, very careful indeed. We've just switched over to a qualifying session here, Will, so drivers getting out and doing their outlaps.
Yep, our featured onboard driver of the day will be Jamie Fluke. We're going to pick him up once we head ourselves to his first lap. But Paul, it's over to you. Take us through qualifying.
Yeah, so welcome along then. It is week number 8 of the Porsche Esports Super Cup, and it is really the last of the sort of more conventional Grand Prix circuits that we're going to be racing around here at the Nurburgring. Of course, there is the WeatherTech Laguna Seca coming up, and then the Monza circuit is the final 2 rounds. But right now, the Nurburgring is where we are featuring, and this is a tricky technical circuit. It is a challenge, and these Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars, they're really going to test these drivers around here and certainly give these drivers opportunities of trying to make some places. But, as I mentioned, Connery, overtaking is difficult and you can get the cutback on quite a few sections of these tracks.
Yeah, that does result in a way, some forms of desperation moves, especially when it comes to that very, very long, very heavy braking zone of turn 1, where it's so inviting that just to have a hairpin for a first turn, you know, it's not what you usually see at racetracks, but it's why some people absolutely love this Nurburgring Grand Prix layout, is that you can just sling one down the inside there and just hope that it works. But sometimes, of course, it does result in a good couple of instances as well. Riding on board then with Jamie Fluke, there he is on the right-hand side of your screen as he heads his way through the wider chicane right at the end of the lap here. The WEC chicane, so not the proper Grand Prix chicane there, so you can carry a lot more speed through it than the other one as he comes out of the Coca-Cola curve across the line. This is a qualifying lap on board with Jamie Fluke, and you're heading down to that particular sequence of corners that we were talking about just a couple of moments ago. Turn 1, heavy on the brakes down into here. You can see how wide the track is, inviting moves down the inside. Jamie Fluke, a little bit of a missed apex on the inside there. Puff of smoke from the tires as well is going to cause him a bit of a problem. And now into the Mercedes-Benz arena, where you can get those side-by-side battles through here. The advantage switches so many times, and Fluke seems to be relatively clean through here, Paul, as he heads his way through 4.
He's been feeling confident about his chances this time around. He's been posting on social media about how he's feeling good for today's races as we're going to that sweeping 5. Keep the car over as left as possible to get into 6 on the power nice and early. Use all of the curb on the outside there, down into the Dunlop curve, turn number 8 on this circuit. You can take this corner a few ways. Jamie's deciding to hold the apex, whereas some drivers will V that corner off. Now the Schumacher S, left and then right. You can see how much he's having to work the wheel there just to keep it straight. Hard onto the brakes then for turn number 11 and 12 now. Get it right over that curb. Get it over to the left-hand side to open up this turn 12 because you want to carry the speed out of here. Use the curb and a little bit of the dirt as well. I think he's got away with that. Through the kink here, it's flat out through the right-hander. Get into 6th gear before then hitting the brakes after the 100-meter board. Over the curbs, don't take too much of the curb or you will get an off-track incident penalty point which will invalidate your lap. Over the curb on the entry into that Coca-Cola curve, and away we go. What's his lap time going to be as he comes across the line? And the answer is a 1:55.0 is what he's got there. So it's put in 4th for the time being, but those times are coming in thick and fast here, Connery.
Yeah, absolutely. Joshua Rodgers provisional qualifying winner at the moment. We'll talk about the whole pole position shenanigans just in a couple of moments' time. Sebastian Jobs second in qualifying right now, so it seems like the pace from practice has carried over into the qualifying session here. Alejandro Sanchez up into P3. That's not a name we expect to usually see inside the top 5 here, so absolutely fantastic job from the Spaniard there. David Williams up into P4 as well, with Felsell in P5, as the rest of these qualifying times come through from your first flying lap of qualifying here. Drivers will get the opportunity to keep their cars out there and do another lap to try and improve their times, but arguably this is where it all matters, when the tyres are the freshest and in the most optimal of temperatures.
Yeah, we're looking at Sebastian Job at the moment then through the Schumacher S, and he's trying to carry as much speed as possible. He's 77 thousandths of Joshua Rodgers' qualifying time. And once again, we talk about the closeness of this field. First to 19th at the moment, within a second, but I'm going to say that that's going to increase as more and more people set lap times. We've got just under 2.5 minutes remaining in qualifying here. It's Josh Rodgers in provisional pole ahead of Mitchell de Jong, with Sebastian Job in third. And it's Job we're looking at here. He's been on a roll. He qualified high up the last 2 rounds, and he's going into the Coca-Cola curve onto the power once again, and he's abandoning. He's bailing out that lap. He obviously didn't feel it, so that's going to be the end of it for Sebastian Job. I can tell you Josh Rodgers is coming around the final corner. Is he going to improve on his lap time? The answer is no. Yes, he is, in fact. He does just set a little bit of a quicker time, about a 10th quicker. So he is on fire here today, is Rodgers. Well, we'll look further down, and that's Tommy Østgaard we're looking at, currently in 8th place, so he's provisionally, with the inverse grid, going to be starting the race from first, but he's abandoning his lap as well. And, well, the rest of your drivers are setting lap times out there, and Moritz Lerner improving up to 19th, but definitely these drivers, they've had it tough. There's quite a few drivers who were eligible for qualifying, haven't actually set lap times here, Connor.
Yeah, absolutely. Sebastian Dunkel looking to improve on 25th position here. It was a bit of a mess of a first lap, but the second lap should be a little bit better here. A 55.2 for him, actually only good enough to get him up to P21 here today. We're still waiting for the likes of Jack Cedric, Alexander Thieb, who I don't think will be able to get out there and set qualifying laps. Here comes Marcus Jensen on the end of his qualifying lap. Maximilian Benecke, of course, he can't actually get around to actually set a qualifying lap here, otherwise he might as well be disqualified from the race, since he does have that qualifying penalty. But Marcus Jensen, no sets penalty for him, as he'll head his way up through the Coca-Cola curve. Then 20 seconds left remaining in the session, so plenty of time to get this one across the line for Jensen and at least get a spot on the starting grid here today. That's a bit higher than those last couple, but 20th position, still not very ideal there for Jensen. And that is going to be about it, because Carroll and Benecke can't qualify, and Thieb is not out on the track to be able to finish the lap.
Well, we've just had it confirmed by Tyler Hudson that Thieb had a qualifying penalty too. So let's have a look at the starting grid. Of course, it's going to be an inverse top 8 compared to what qualifying times were set. So it's Jared Filsell who's starting this race on pole position, ahead of Alejandro Sanchez with Martin Cronke third place. Jeremy Bootloop, the Frenchman, ran out your top 4. David Williams, really good for him, up in 5th place ahead of Sebastian Job in 6th. Mitchell de Jong and Josh Rodgers 7th and 8th, and the rest of the drivers as they qualified. Tommy Østgaard 9th place ahead of Gregor Hutu. That rounds out row number 5. Patrick Holtzman and Kevin Ellis Jr. with Thomas Tetela and Jamie Fluke down in 14th place. Ricardo Castro-Ledo, he's been commented about trying to get into the top 20 of the championship. He's in 15th ahead of Kazuki Umashima. Actually, that's a decent qualifying for Kazuki there. Antoine Hijla and Paschalis Georgis there as well. Matti Piatella, Marcus Jensen rounds out the top 20. Then Yao Vaz, Niles Koch, Sebastian Dunkel, Moritz Lerner, Balbi Zelensky, Ilka Harpala and Dion Verges are all the drivers who have scored lap times. And Max Benecke, Graham Carroll, Alexander Thieb and Jack Sedgwick round out your starting grid here for today's race. So, just the last few moments for these drivers to settle down, get their heart rate under control. That's going to be a big thing here. The anxiety will will be just elevated slightly, but these drivers certainly have got a show, going to put on a show for us, that's for sure. Just quickly, Connery, turn number 1 is hopefully not going to be chaos, but you never know. In fact, we've got everybody on the grid. So unfortunately, we'll get that comment from Connery in a moment, because we're getting ready for the lights then. It is the sprint race of the Porsche Esports Supercup. The green flag's in the air, away they go then, and it's a great start from Jared Filsell on pole position. Down in towards turn number 1, Alejandro Sanchez, he's on the inside, he's looking in towards that turn 1, it's tight on the inside there, they're going 3 wide into 1, they'll sort themselves out then for turn number 2, and everybody's making their way through there. So that's good to see at the start here, but Filsell's already pulling out slight advantage here as Kroenke and Sanchez going side by side, and here's Jeremy Bootloop trying to get involved in this one, as well as Sebastian Job in towards turn number 5 for the first time. Kroenke down the inside. It means he's going to have the outside for the next 2 corners there. Sanchez, great defensive driving into that corner, down the hill towards Dunlop now. And these drivers still sorting themselves out. We've got Kroenke and Bootloop now, side by side, down into the hairpin. And it's going to be Bootloop who goes down the inside. And here's Sebastian Job, ever the opportunist, down the inside at Dunlop. And he's going to try and make that work, but carrying the speed out the corner is Martin Kroenke in towards the Schumacher S. So for the time being, it's Job right ahead of Mitchell de Jong. But crucially for them, Joshua Rodgers down in 8th place, and he hasn't progressed forward. Rest of your field moving through. We've got side by side there. That was Jurgis. And we've got a sprint in the background, and it's Kazuki Mashiva. I said he'd had a decent qualifying run, and unfortunately, he's been spun around, and he is down to stun dead last, Connery.
Yeah, not a great result there for Burst Esports. That was a bit of an altercation, perhaps, between himself and Marty Piatella. No, it's just all on his own. Got the braking all wrong for the left-hander and spins himself around on the exit, and Kazuki Yamashima filtered all the way back to the very rear end of this field here, as the field in its entirety comes out of the final turn to complete lap 1 and on to lap 2 then here. Mitchell de Jong and the car of Sebastian Job going to be side by side on the way down towards turn 1. That's the first set of side by side that you see on your screen. You can see it as they come through turn 1, as we get ourselves our focus here on the race, on the front of the field here. The 2 VRS Crown Sim Sports cars of Bootloop and Kroenke looking their way through, as there's a huge frantic gaggle behind. Sebastian Job trying to work his way through, and a bit of contact between 2 Commander cars as well. Going through turn 4, that's a Williams Esports car right in the front of our shot. Oh, that's absolute carnage in the Mercedes arena.
Yes, Moritz Lerner is up and over. Pascal's Jurgis was involved in that as well. I think Sebastian Dunkel and Alexander Thebe is pulling over here. We'll get the replay. It's up ahead where the accident happens, and then all of a sudden they just end up getting it's a real mess is that one. You were right the first time. 2 cars up and over. Alexander Thebe tries to get going again, but yeah, it was all happening in front. We'll have a look from Jurgis on board here then. The Greek driver into the left-hander, bang, bang, up and over. Oof. And yeah, that's Jurgis up and over as well. So quite a number of cars, 4 cars in the pit lane then for the time being. And all the while that was happening, Sebastian Job has dropped down a position behind Mitchell de Jong, down to 6th place, and Josh Rodgers made money moves, and that was on David Williams as well. So the Australian is right behind the man who has been on form, Sebastian Job, in these last 2 rounds as they go through the chicane once again into the final corner. Currently, Jared Filsell 1.4 seconds ahead of Alejandro Sanchez, who is a second ahead of these guys that you can see on the screen. Martin Kroenke, Jeremy Bootloop's in 3rd, Kroenke 4th, de Jong, Job, Rodgers and Williams. That's your top 8 as they go across the line down into 1. They're sorting themselves out here now, Conor. They're trying to just calm themselves down in this field. It is only a 15-minute race, so people need to make moves. And speaking of making moves, Max Benecke is up to 18th already.
Oh, yeah. That's the start that you want if you want to try and chase points here at what is, by many assessments, his best racetrack, as now he tries to work his way through on Yao Vaz, the driver ahead of him. And then further down the line, you do have the likes of Marti Piatella, Antoine Higuan a little bit further down as well. But Benecke, the further up he gets through this field, the harder it is to try and work his way through on some of these drivers. That's just how close this entire field is. Only a good couple of tenths of a second separating almost everyone in qualifying. And when it comes to race pace, things seem to be very, very close as well. But Benecke through the Dunlop curve now can't really find any line to really work with through there to try and bring himself alongside Yao Vaz. He might as well just be waiting for a bit of a better opportunity in towards turn 1 this time around to try and get that car disposed of before moving even further forward. So Benecke, recovery drive in full swing from that qualifying penalty. Might just have a look at Yao Vaz to 12. Nope, just going to stay in line behind, and that is just the perils of that middle sector sometimes here at the Nurburgring GP circuit. Just checking in with more of your front runners. Seems like they've gotten themselves single file with a couple of decent gaps here. So this is actually what we're used to seeing here in the Porsche Esports Super Cup. The front of the field actually starting to gap each other and not all that many close battles. But we do have one for P9 and 10. This is Tommy Erskard and Patrick Holtzmann. So Coanda versus Red Bull. It's Norwegian versus the German on the way down to turn 1. Holtzmann not going to go for the absolute send down the inside at 1 this time around, but just keep in mind for that as a possibility coming into the last couple of minutes of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a spinner behind them, and that was actually Vaz, wasn't it? Yeah, Vaz. So I don't know what happened in turn 1. We'll get a replay then, and it's going to turn number 1 here. So he's actually making a move on the Coanda car there. Goes in far too deep, locks up, and he's going to spin it on his own. Yes, he is. And Max Benecke, look at how close he got to that then. And yeah, Vaz, to be fair to him, has only lost 1 position in all of that. So great recovery from him. And we'll have a look from on board with Benecke. Now you see him there, and we're going to go left. Oh, just a slightest of contact there. It has caused a little bit of damage on his front right, but it shouldn't be affecting him too much.
Yeah, it should be relatively okay for Maximilian Benecke as he continues to try and work his way all the way back through this field. We've got about 8 minutes left in this race. We're riding on board with the American Mitchell de Jong. He's currently under threat from Sebastian Job behind. Job kind of pressing himself right out to the rear bumper of that car. Can't exactly see that through the rear view mirror. It's not at quite the right angle for us. Maybe Mitchell can adjust that one for us. That would be absolutely fantastic. But Mitchell de Jong, of course, he is within sort of an outside chance at this championship battle right now. 90 or so points behind Joshua Rodgers. And well, if he finishes where he does in this sprint race, then he's going to make that gap seem a little bit tighter. So Mitchell de Jong, every single point matters for him at this stage.
Absolutely. It was at the start of this lap that Rodgers was, de Jong was actually making the pressure on Martin Kronke, which is why we were looking at him looking forward, but then it's behind. And look at this queue of cars now. They're all stuck up behind Jeremy Bootloop then, as we've got side-by-side action with Benecke and the 96, and that is Matti Piatella, and running wide. Oh, they're getting a little bit physical there, and I don't think Max appreciated that. Neither did Marty, and here comes Jack Sedgwick as well, another man who's on a recovery after not setting a qualifying time, and those two now battling side by side. We'll look from the back of Benecke here, and they're still side by side. This is what Benecke wants, because he can make a little bit of a breakaway from Sedgwick, but we'll have a look at that again, and I think Benecke didn't appreciate being forced wide that much, and that's questionable driving into the side.
No. Well, Paul, I'll tell you why. It's because Marty Piatella actually, in the run-up to that, got a slowdown penalty, and it was a bit nefarious in terms of using the slowdown penalty to be able to block Maximilian Benecke. So that's why Benecke wasn't too happy about how the situation was handled. A bit of a dooring on the entry to the Mercedes arena, just letting his emotions known, it has to be said, coming through there. But Benecke, he does end up gaining the position, but it was much more difficult than he perhaps expected over Piatella. Piatella, but now he's up to P16, so gaining points here and there. And now the next driver is going to be Antoine Higlan, which is a good second or so, well, more than a second or so. It's up to 4 seconds down the road, so this is looking a little bit more impossible here for Benecke to try and get himself a couple of more points here. But looking back towards the front of the field, though, it is Jeremy Bootloop and Martin Kroenke on the way down towards turn number 1. That might be a potential battle, so the Frenchman has to defend from the German now, as Kroenke has a little bit of a look on the outside. Maybe look for the cutback move. He does have a car's length of space to be able to squeeze himself in there, because he had another one of his teammates have a bit of a look there. That was Mitchell de Jong, so 3 Coanda cars in one piece of real estate here, and almost ended in tragedy.
As we have a look at the replay of that, the concertina effect we were seeing right there. But if we stick with this, because behind, look at that, Job and Rodgers absolutely neck and neck going into turn number 5 now. Rodgers on the inside. Job can hold, hanging out around the outside. He's got the inside, but I tell you what, Rodgers is not doing a bad job there. But Job, better run through turn number 6, down towards the hairpin, the Dunlop hairpin. They're still not giving each other an inch here into the hairpin now. Job locking up the brakes. That's going to compromise Rodgers there, and that allows Job to stay ahead. But look at the gap in front of them now, because that's all of a sudden opened up to a second when they were in that queue of cars going into turn number 1. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. We've got 4 minutes remaining. Rodgers can't afford any sort of rash moves, though. That's the thing, as he's looking down the inside. Well, look at Martin Piatella actually looking to try and get or hold on to a position with Graham Carroll here. And round he goes. Piatella has been turned by Jack Sedgwick. Well, I hope he's not been turned, but there was certainly contact there. We'll have to have a look at the replay of that as time is running out here. People are getting more and more desperate, Connery.
Yeah, it was Piatella trying to find an outside line, but it was just misjudged slightly, as Cedric's already there trying to take the lane on the outside. So 2 into 1 simply doesn't go, and it results in Piatella spinning towards the outside of the left there. You can just see contact around into the grass, doing a little bit of lawn mowing. One thing
worth pointing out as well, Josh Rodgers has dropped down. He's managed to get himself back ahead of David Williams, but he did for a momentarily drop a position there down to 8th place. So he's back up to 7th now is Josh. So a little issue towards the end of the lap for the Australian. And this is the point that I was going to make before we had that incident. Josh cannot afford to get involved in make any rash moves, because he has had that qualifying ban earlier in the season. He can't afford to end up with a penalty that causes him to miss out the race.
And Paul, it was a very easy pass over David Williams. I don't think Williams even fought this one. Just allowing... No, he was let off the throttle before even the braking zone of turn 1 arrived. That's how accommodating, shall we say, David Williams was of that pass. So he's very well aware of the situation that Joshua Rodgers is in right now in terms of the championship battle. I personally don't like to see it, but I understand teammates will do what teammates do. But yeah, it's Rodgers now able to gain that position up into P7 now in this situation. But something tells me that Sebastian Job won't be as accommodating of a pass like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Worth pointing out that David Williams is 16th in the championship going into this round of the championship, and it's that top 20 that you got to look for. So as well as concentrating on the front of the championship, we're going to keep half an eye towards the end of the season on the 20th spot as well. But look at the pressure now. Mitchell de Jong is putting on. This is going to be the start of their final lap of this 15-minute sprint race. This is absolutely flown by as this first race here. And, well, de Jong getting the pressure on Kroenke. It's Germany versus the United States. Looking to the outside line is de Jong, and he's got to be careful because Sebastian Job is loitering with intent there. You can see the positions gained. Not that many positions gained in that top 10, or top 12 should I say. David Williams, the biggest loser there with 3 positions, but it's there. Further down, Benecke, Carroll, both 12 positions. Sedgwick up 13 spots as well. So they're the big gainers out of this race here. and you can see how Rodgers down 11 positions out the race after that incident at the arena section. But here we go, downhill towards the Dunlop hairpin for the final time, and it's worth pointing out Jared Filsell just about a second ahead. It's been keeping around there, but Alejandro Sanchez doing a really good job of gapping out second to third. So he's actually been gaining slightly as Alejandro on these last few laps, but maybe that's Filsell just managing the gap at the front there. But it's the drivers behind that are the ones who are keeping the pressure on, but I don't think there's going to be any too rash a move further down your top three into that gaggle of cars at the back there. But looking back from Filsell, there's Sanchez behind. He's close, but he's not close enough to make any moves. So the Apex Racing Team driver, Jared Filsell, he was a winner at Watkins Glen in the feature race, and he's coming into the final corner, and he's going to win the heat race, the sprint race here in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Across the line then for the Apex Racing Team, Jared Filsell takes the win in the sprint race. Second place for Alejandro Sanchez, with Jeremy Bootlube leading that queue of cars of Kroenke, De Jong, Job, Rodgers, and then Williams. Tommy Erskard and Patrick Holtzman rounding out the top 10 for you, but it was rather simple for Jared out at the front there. He just gapped out at the front when he needed to, and gained all the time that he needed to at the start of the race. We're just waiting for the final few drivers to come across the line, as Sebastian Dunkel has got significant damage from that incident at the arena section. But we'll be able to take you through your finishing results then of the opening race here around the Nurburgring, and it is Jared Filsell, your race winner, ahead of Alejandro Sanchez. Jeremy Bootlube third, with Kroenke right behind in fourth place. Mitchell de Jong finished off fifth, with Sebastian Job in sixth. Joshua Rodgers seventh, ahead of David Williams. Accommodating move down in eighth place. Tommy Erskard ninth, with Gregor Hutu Patrick Holtzman rounding out your top 10. Then it's Gregor Hutu in 11th, with Thomas Tetela in 12th. Kevin Ellis Jr. 13th, finished where he started, ahead of Ricardo Castro-Ledo. And then Antoine Hijlam, Max Benecke up to 16th in the end. Graham Carroll, Jack Sedgwick as well, recovery drives from them. Jamie Fluke, not the best of races from him, got involved early on, down in 19th with Marcus Jensen. 20th. 21st then is Kazuki Mishima with that spin. Mats Piatella, Ilka Harpler, Bob Zelensky, Dion Verges. Sebastian Dunkel is the last of your runners, and then Yao Vaz, Nels Kosh, Michelis Georgis, Alexander Thebe, and Moritz Lerner are all your non-finishers.
Thank you very much there, Paul. One of the things I noticed there, we're going to show the results once again, is that you seem to have a lot of countries in groups together outside of your top 10, but it is Jared Filsell then from the Apex Racing Team who gets himself victory, and also the best finish in the Porsche Esports Supercup for an MSI Esports driver. Alejandro Sanchez coming home in second place. Then it is the gaggle of Kiwanis SimSports drivers, with Sebastian Job as the meat inside the sandwich, sixth place for him. Importantly for De Jong and Job here, Connery, they both finish ahead of Josh Rodgers.
Yes, they do. So gaining the points required, perhaps maybe not in a very quick fashion, only finishing a 1 or 2 positions ahead of him. But like I said during the broadcast, every little helps in terms of the points that you're able to get here in this championship battle. I just have a little bit of a look to see where Benecke finished. Benecke finished P16, so still a very decent result for him, just climbing about halfway through the field, right from the back of the grid to finish there. So that is a decent performance from him, and it is kind of keeping him in contention here. His entire race right now, his entire main race as well, is going to be all about damage limitation in terms of the points there. But I have to say, though, it was a fantastic performance for Alejandro Sanchez to get himself up into P2 here for the sprint race. And just to put that into context, his highest finish so far this season was actually a P4 in the sprint race of Silverstone. So And the only other time inside the top 10 would be at one of the Canada race a little bit further, a little bit while ago, and then of course he had a P10 in the main race at Silverstone. So he's having a kind of late season resurgence as well, but a P2 is a great points haul for him.
Yeah, Paul, I'm showing Mitchell, Max Benecke even right now, and you know that I like my rules, and I am one of the few people to have ever read the entire iRacing Sporting Code on air to prove that I've actually read it. Benecke had a qualifying penalty. He was suspended from qualifying.
Yes.
He didn't turn a lap, but he was on track. This is where the spirit of the rules come in, and this isn't a first take here. We're not trying to necessarily throw up some controversy, but if I was clerk of the course, suspension from qualifying means you don't go out on track.
Well, I mean, this is where you then look at the interpretation of regulations, and you know me, Will. I very hot on the interpretation of regulations. So it's if there isn't anything that strictly says that you cannot go out on track, then he will argue that point. He will say there's nothing that actually specifically says that I cannot go out on track. It's just that I have a qualifying ban, which means he'll interpret it as I'm not allowed to set a time, whereas most people would interpret that as you're not allowed on track.
Because therefore the session is qualifying, therefore the purpose of the session is to qualify. Connery.
I want to butt in here and say, because of the way we have the qualifying session set up here in iRacing, it's solo qualifying. Even by being out there on track, he is not affecting anyone else's qualifying pace. Let's just say that. So I think this is nothing. If I'm being completely honest, it's as long as he doesn't set a time, it's just absolutely fine with me. He's not affecting anyone else's qualifying. He's just out there getting a little bit of extra practice. But the thing is, a couple of that's extra practice is not going to matter much in the grand scheme of things. But go on, Paul.
On the same front, Graham Carroll and Alexander Thebe, who we found out did have a penalty as well, didn't go out on track at all.
Yeah.
Well, they had the same opportunity too.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to talk about this one after the race. This is going to be a nice conversation for after the race. We are going ourselves, though, over to the grid for race number 2. Paul, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it is race time here in this second race. Of course, they start the race as they finished the sprint race just a few minutes ago, and so that means that Jared Filsell will once again be on pole position, Alejandro Sanchez in second, and we saw how those two, with the good start that they had, okay, Sanchez was doing a little bit of battling with Kronke and boot loop. It means that they were able to stay in the top 2 positions. We're running through the grid on screen very quickly for you, and well, it'll be interesting to see how Benecke comes through the field in this feature race. It's a longer race, of course, and well, already the drivers are all on the grid, so they'll be looking to the lights here, waiting for the green light. And away we go then, the start of the feature race in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Good start from Sanchez, actually. He's got the inside line on Filsell. Filsell is stuck in the middle of the track because Bootloop's looking to the outside. Oh, they've all missed the braking into turn 1. Sanchez, an absolute nightmare. Is he going to hold on to it, though? The answer is no, but Filsell's dropped down. Oh, there's contact. Bootloop is around. He's got contact here as well. We're sorting everything out here, and still chaos. And 2 wide, 3 wide through the arena complex, but amazingly everybody does look to be still going. Massive accident there for Castrolado in the background. Another car off as well. There's a really bad rejoin as well from Castrolado. Georgis is off as well. Massive incident further back. We'll get the replay up, or try to get the replay up on screen. Here we go. So you can see that Sanchez had missed his braking point. There was contact between 2 Coanda cars in the first part of the arena section, which sent Bootloop off, and then it all really kicks off around the second part of the complex here. You can see the 74 car on the inside, Castrolado, bang, there's first contact, around he goes into the barrier, and he's just rolling that car straight away in front of everybody, and well, yeah, that's the least said about that, the better. There was an incident actually to turn 1 as well that was further down your field, but really the big talking point is that big incident there. Castrolado, Piatella, Yao Vaz and Pedros Georges are all out of the race, but that missing your braking into turn 1 there for Sanchez, Connery, as we saw on the replay again. It's just heartbreaking. He was so determined and got a really good start.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to capitalize on everything there. You know, he wanted that race lead of a main race in the Porsche Esports Supercup, which, you know, not all that many people have been able to get here. But unfortunately for the Spanish driver, completely messed up into turn 1. Of course, well, indirectly was a participant in the carnage bind, I guess is the way I'll phrase that one. He actually still sits in around about P4 here, so he hasn't really lost much in terms of that one. He could have so easily been cycled all the way back to the mid-pack here, so he is kind of lucky that he's been able to maintain some form of position here on lap 2. We are on board with Martin Kroenke, though, who tries to give chase to Jared Filsell. And Filsell, well, unlike last race, he hasn't really been able to extend the gap here on the first 1 or 2 laps, thanks to a bit of battling behind. It's Kroenke that's fallen in line pretty easily, and Sebastian Job does the same as well. And a little bit further back, you have the Quanda Armada once again. That's David Williams and Mitchell de Jong as well. De Jong trying to work his way through, but as it stands, he is a couple positions behind. Joshua Rodgers will be losing points to him in the championship, and well, can't really afford to do so in this situation. And David Williams, he's giving everyone points away for free at this point, it seems.
It's like Oprah Winfrey. You get a position and you get a position as they go through, and only for team compatriots in his team, so that's he's not that generous. But Sebastian Job has been the pressure on. Here's Gregor Hutu in 10th place. He's behind Patrick Holtzman, so these two battling away, and look at Job, the run out the chicane, looking to the inside of Coca-Cola curve, and that's the racecraft right there of Martin Kroenke. He realised that Job had a nose in there, didn't completely move onto the apex, gave him the racing room so he didn't get turned around himself. That is very smart racing. You can hold it around the outside. Sanchez is going down, trying to hold on to his position ahead of Rodgers as well, but Kroenke knew that this section was coming up.
They're still battling on the live pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic to see as they're going into the second part of the arena. We've got Rodgers and Sanchez behind. We're seeing this whole battle for second down to 5th place, and finally they sort themselves out. Rodgers is up to 4th place behind Martin Kroenke, but Sebastian Job, crucially, is ahead of Martin Kroenke here, and he'll be setting his sights in front now. He doesn't want to look back. He wants to look forward at Jared Filsell, who's 1.4 ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Job made his way through up into P2, and now he's the driver responsible for giving chase to your leading Australian, and it's not the one that perhaps everyone expects every single time we hit the track here. It's Jared Filsell leading from Sebastian Job, and here's the other Australian that people do expect to be leading races. That's Joshua Rodgers on board with him as he tries to work his way through on his own teammate of Martin Kroenke up in towards turn 11. Kroenke's still ahead for now, but I have to wonder whether he'll have to, well, not have to, but whether he will let Joshua Rodgers go here to try and chase a championship, since Kroenke is out of that one for all intents and purposes right now. So maybe he'll have to do his best David Williams impression and let Rodgers by here, but we do know, and as Philip Stam and others in Coanda keep telling us, there is no team orders in Coanda Sim Sports, but Joshua Rodgers easy on his way through there. Coca-Cola curve. Sanchez trying to stick his nose in as well in that MSI Esports car. He'll have a compromised line coming off the corner and is now under threat from Mitchell de Jong around the outside, and Sanchez still losing ground here on the way down into turn 1, goes so deep on the brakes and decides to head his way down the inside of Kroenke as well. Kroenke gives him the space up towards the Mercedes arena. They continue fighting through turn 3. Mitchell de Jong inside, not quite clear just yet. Sanchez looking for a big send down the inside at the second left. but he has to fall behind. He has to know when he's beaten, and now a single file through turn 4. Absolutely fantastic flurry of battle.
Sanchez in 2 laps has dropped down from 4th to 6th. He's got David Williams all over him. Behind them as well, there's a gaggle of cars. Tommy Østgaard, there's Patrick Holtzman, Gregor Hooter and Jeremy Bootloop all scrapping away. There's been lights flashing between the 4 of them as well. We've got a car off. Oh, don't say that's Kazuki again. It is Kazuki and Mashima. He's having an absolute nightmare in this championship, and it's in that complex there of turn 5 and turn 6, and he's helped around there that was the Williams car that turned him around. So not the best day for Kazuki as he rejoins, and look at that, safe rejoin then from him back onto track. That's how you do it there. But well, you look at the front of your field, João Felcel, you can see the gap that he's got, but that gap is closing. Sebastian Job is slowly bringing that gap in. It was more than a second, it was about a second and a half just a couple of laps ago. Now it's down to a second, and the 2 of them set pretty similar lap times the last time around, but now as they go over the start and finish straight, we'll be able to see what sort of lap times they do. 55.2 from Felcel, 54.9 from Job. He's taken 0.3 out of Felcel, and he's bringing Joshua Rodgers along with him. There's 2 Coanda cars side by side, De Jong and Kroenke are
Sanchez!
places on. Well, there's a big incident at turn number 1 as we look at this pack of Benecke coming into that as well. Luckily it's cleared as that incident at turn number 1, but Benecke, look at the drive he's had, up to 12th place. As we mentioned earlier, it is more difficult to gain positions the further up the field you go, but that's Sanchez just missing his braking and turning. I believe that was Jeremy Bootloop that he turned, was it, or was it Tommy Østgaard? It was one of the 2. Yeah, it was Kroenke. Sorry, Martin Kroenke. I do apologise, getting my numbers mixed up there, but yeah, just missed his braking into the rear quarter panel of him there, and away goes Sanchez once again. But Benecke, he's working his way up through the field here, up to 12th at the moment, but crucially for him, he's got a Coanda car, Jeremy Bootloop, right ahead, who wasn't the slowest of cars either, Conor.
Not the slowest of cars indeed, as you see Kroenke getting involved in that one. Took the brunt of the impact there from Sanchez. As we do return to the live pictures, we do have a little bit of a battle a little bit further back as well. Here's Maximilian Benecke behind the wheel of that number 11 car, looking to try and work his way into the top 10 here. He has 2 positions to be able to do so, and about 20 minutes to be able to make it work as well. So this is probably the best the race could have gone so far here for Benecke, and well, you can see ahead that Hutu is trying to make a position up on Martin Kroenke. So Hutu versus Kroenke, this is a little bit of deja vu here. If you look at the past couple of years of iRacing World Championships, Hutu around the outside, that gives Bootloop the position to be able to have a bit of a look, and here comes Benecke now as we ride on board with Hutu. It's all happening behind him, as you can see from the aerial coverage, and now Benecke gets himself ahead of the Frenchman. Has to defend though down in towards turn 1. Has a look at the fin of Hutu as well. Here comes Bootloop again down the inside. He's not done with this battle at all. Side by side between Kroenke and Hutu through the Mercedes arena, and now Benecke looks to capitalize on that fact as well. Get all of these positions done. Here comes Hutu down the inside of Kroenke. Oh, that's such a dominant move there. A bit of contact off the corner through turn 3. Maximilian Benecke's been able to make a position, and he may be able to make up more as well.
Yeah, so as you can see what the arena section does, it gives you so many options as they go through into the left-hander, and Kroenke must have damage on that car from that incident with Sanchez, because he's dropping down the order. He's side by side with Graham Carroll. We'll have a look at the replay then of everything that happened in the Mercedes arena section, and it was side by side with Kroenke and Hutu. That allowed Benecke to have a look as well, but he wasn't alongside. And Hutu down the inside, aggressive move, locked his brakes a little bit, just the tiniest of touches, and that allowed Benecke to just pop down the inside and gain another position. So up to 10th place now for Max Benecke. He's on a charge at the moment. As we go back to live pictures, then you can see Benecke set sight tight set, on the car in front of that's Gregor Hutu, but look ahead because your leader has been wound in. He's now only half a second ahead of the battle for second place. That's between Job and Joshua Rodgers. So your championship leader Rodgers looking really good for some solid points here to try and pull out his championship lead. Again, at this point, he really doesn't need to make a move because he's not losing that many points to Sebastian Job, who feels the need to go defensive into turn number 1, and that's going to compromise him slightly. Phil Sell is going to just be happy with these two battling it out here between the two of them as they go into 2 and then 3. Around the left-hander they go. We'll look back as well because Hutu and Bootloop side by side now between the two of them. Nose in there for Gregor. We saw how he made the move. There was lock brakes from Benecke in front of them. That almost caused the concertina effect there, but Bootloop has managed to stay ahead. And here comes Graham Carroll now, the Scotsman, having to get off the power, maybe even touch the brakes because Hutu wasn't giving him the space, wasn't going to allow him the room. So 10th, 11th and 12th, which means that Benecke now incredibly is up to 9th place in this race. And here comes Carroll now. He's on the defensive because alongside him here is Jamie Fluke, the Apex Racing Team driver, the Northern Irishman. So battle of the Celtic nations here around the Dunlop hairpin. Fluke, if he can hold it down the outside, he's got the inside for the first part, the Schumacher S. Can they keep on doing it? We're looking at Jamie Fluke right now as he works his way through. He's just having to stick behind Graham Carroll, but you can see how he's having to focus, how he's having to work on Graham Carroll in front of him, but also concentrate on the drivers behind because there's others as well involved in this one, and Sedgwick is the one behind him right now. But right now, Jamie Fluke, he's settled himself down once again behind Graham Carroll, but he won't be giving this one up.
P2, Joshua Rodgers inside line through the final corner over Sebastian Job. Had a big look indeed, and he might still have the opportunity. You can see the weaving Job is doing down the pit straight, trying to break the draft, but Rodgers might just have an opportunity here. Down the inside of turn 1, positions his car in the right place, but no! Sebastian Job is around at turn 1. Huge implications there in terms of the points for this race as Job gets himself cycled almost all the way to the back of the field, almost collides there with Maximilian Benecke as he has to get on the brakes to avoid an impact there. So might be even further drama there between those two as we'll see that instant into 1.
Yes, we'll look at that. We just caught the back end of it there. Here we go then from our aerial coverage once again, and it's Rodgers looking to the inside. He's trying to make that move. Job turns in and bang, around he goes. I think the stewards may be having a look at that, and Rodgers, as we've mentioned, he can't afford to get involved in any silly incidents because he could end up costing himself a race in this championship. And considering he's at the lead of the championship, and he'll be really panicking about that one.
Yeah, that is for sure. Of course, we do have the point that, you know, Australian versus European racing in terms of sim racing does sometimes turn out like that, but yeah, he does have to be very careful indeed with the instance that he gets himself into because, well, he's already had a qualifying ban so far this season, and, you know, any further more serious punishments then might just put him at a huge disadvantage coming into the latter round of the championship. So big drama, 15 minutes left remaining in this race, and still very much all to play for in terms of your race win here, because Joshua Rodgers, he needs to put that instant into the back of his mind right now, or rather out of his mind, and have to actually go and chase this race win now, no matter what happens in the steward's office.
Well, the man who really has benefited out of that is Joshua Rodgers, because now he's not got somebody slowing himself up with the battling to really put the pressure on your race leader of Jared Filsell. There's still just under half of the race remaining in this one. It is Jared Filsell in the lead ahead of Joshua Rodgers in second place. Mitchell de Jong is in third place at the moment. He's got a bit of no man's land at the moment for Mitchell ahead of David Williams. Alejandro Sanchez now fifth place ahead of Patrick Holtzman and Tommy Erstgaard. Those two haven't been able to be separated all day. We're looking at the battling further down, and that is Niels Kush down in 19th, 18th, battle with Marcus Jensen as they're going into the left right here. And these drivers, they've got a queue of cars behind them as well. Antoine Hijlan and Alexander Thebe are involved in this, and well, nice move there from Jensen to get ahead of Niels Kush. And so these drivers back onto the brakes, looking into the Dunlop curve. Niles trying to make it work, but it's not quite working out for him as we go up into the Schumacher S. But great racing, shows what great racing you have throughout the field. Let's not forget that this is such a tightly packed and competitive field that unfortunately incidents are going to happen when you're involved in such close quarters racing like this.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful, and now Phil Sell will probably be very aware of what has happened to Joshua Rodgers. He probably got a good view of it in his wing mirrors and his rear view mirrors as well, but it is an all-Australian affair here for the battle for P1 in your main race of this round of the Porsche Esports Supercup. Rodgers looking for a line through turn 1, looking to get the traction off the corner to be able to bring himself close up to the rear bumper coming through the Mercedes arena. And now Joshua Rodgers 2.5 seconds is the gap over Mitchell de Jong in P3, so they have a huge amount of space to be able to try and make this battle work over the next good couple of minutes here between these two. I feel like Joshua Rodgers has the ultimate pace advantage here over Phil Sell. He was actually 0.4 of a second faster than his compatriot on that last lap. So Rodgers has all the cards, but can he actually make them work in this situation?
But we have seen already in this season how quick Phil Sell can be in this car. We saw it at Watkins Glen, didn't we? The win that he got in the feature race there, along with the second place, it was Apex Racing Team's debut World Championship win for them. And so he can pedal this car, and he can do a good job in it. Here comes Rodgers then, he's looking to the inside, and well, Phil Sell is going to hold that outside line. It gives him the inside for the next 2 turns. But Phil Sell, that's a warning shot right there for him. Phil Sell's got to be concerned now because Rodgers is looking and he's trying to make the move. He's going to look to the outside, try and carry the speed into the chicane. It's going to be the last of the late breakers, but it's on the short braking zone here. Phil Sell's allowing the room, allowing the space. He doesn't want to get punted out of this position into Coca-Cola curve once again. We're heading into the final third of this race, and well, Rodgers is setting him up here. He's in the slipstream, he's in the draft as they go behind the pit buildings, looking down towards turn number 1 then, and looking to the inside is Rodgers. He's going to make this move. Is he going to make it stick? He holds it on the apex. Phil Sell down to second, but he's going to try the cut back here into 2. It's not quite worked out for him, but we've seen how in this arena section you can make the different lines work. Phil Sell taking the wide line into 3. He's going to look to get the wide line into 4 to get the run out of the corner. The bounce and clatter over the curbs there, but I think Rodgers has got this one sewn up for now, and he's holding on to that lead here. So Rodgers into the lead, championship leader, rather controversially now, up into the lead here, but we'll have to let that one be dealt with by the stewards. But Connery, he's got the pace that he can pull away from Jared.
Yeah, that's definitely what the overall option will be here in this situation between these two drivers. It's going to be a case now that Rodgers, I think, is going to pull away. I don't think the draft is going to be strong enough for Phil Sell to keep himself in contention here. I have been wrong before, but Rodgers has been so strong over the course of this race that I would not bet against him at all. So with the time that we have remaining, around about 9 minutes, I think we'll be seeing yet another Joshua Rodgers win. But I hope for the sake of the racing that Phil Sell can keep up.
Absolutely, it would be great to have a great finish like we had, and we've had in previous races in this championship. You are watching the Porsche Esports Supercup here on the iRacing Esports Network. Thank you very much for joining us. It's certainly been some really good action here today. A little bit of contact here and there as well, but we're looking at this battle here between the number 1 car, Tommy Østgaard, and Sebastian Job. This is 7th and 8th place. Loitering in the background of those two, you just see him there, just coming to shot, was Max Benecke. He's in 9th place on a recovery drive after his qualifying penalty. And look ahead, Job is making the move, he's lining up, and Tommy is going to hold the inside line there, locks up his brake, does Tommy Østgaard. Job now trying to get that cut back, trying the different lines here, as we've mentioned a few times throughout this part of the track. Well, Job trying to go to the inside, Østgaard defending that move and defending it late, and that's brought Benecke into this. And right now, if you're Tommy Østgaard, you're trying to get Benecke involved this one to slow down Job so he can try and pull away.
Yeah, that could be the overall objective here. It's the advantage, unfortunately, when we have a sort of series where, yes, it is solo drivers in terms of the points, but there are team allegiances going on. So, you know, stuff like this can and does happen. And you can just see how Østgaard's making life difficult. But there we go. Actually, further back, Graham Carroll having a little bit of a battle with, I believe this is Jack Cedric, on the way up to the Michael Schumacher S's. Then side by side through here. We've seen it once before. We'll see it again, and they're able to keep it clean all the way through. Here comes Jamie Fluke then on the outside as he heads his way up through turn 11, door to door between the two of them through there. And Jack Cedric still able to hold position here. There's Moritz Lohner that's trying to tag onto the back of this battle. Same with Kevin Ellis Jr. as well. Through the dust and debris they go on the way up to the NGK chicane. Then we're actually riding on the board with one of the drivers here. It's going to be up into the NGK chicane. You can see this driver is currently 2nd in line, so this is going to be 3rd in line, excuse me. So this is Jamie Fluke, as you'll get to see his race cam on the right hand side. You see the battling ahead of him as well. Graham Carroll versus Cedric on the way down towards turn 1. Not a lot of time left in this race to be able to make these moves work, but Cedric then inside line for turn 1. Late on the brakes he goes. Is he able to secure the position? He is for the apex, but needs to clear it on the exit of the corner as well. Fluke's looking to get himself involved here over the driver of Graham Carroll in that Red Bull Racing Esports car, but Jamie Fluke, as part of Apex Racing team, can't really find a gap here in this sort of situation. Desperately looking for one, but not able to capitalize on anything he's been handed so far.
This queue of cars, it's a Scotsman, a Northern Irishman, an Englishman, a German, another Scotsman, and Finnish driver as we look forward as well, because Benecke, he's been trying to make moves, and Sebastian Job at the start of this lap, it didn't work out for him, so he's still stuck behind in 9th place, but he wants those championship points. They all count towards the end of the season, and Benecke now, as they're going uphill through the Schumacher S, you can see his lap times, his last 2 laps, almost 7/10 of a second quicker than Sebastian Job in his last 2 laps. So these two, they're in a queue, stuck behind Tommy Østgaard, who's doing a really sterling job there to keep in 7th place for the time being. But this gap has broken out behind Patrick Holtzman, between him and Østgaard, because Østgaard is having to defend so much, it's slowing himself down. Into the chicane they go once again, then late braking, sling it into the left and then the right, up over the curb for the primary line into the final right-hander. We're just under 5 minutes remaining in this feature race here, and well, these drivers going across the line. You can see the top 8 at the bottom of the screen. Rodgers, Phil De Jong, that's your podium. They're going to end up winning money if they stay in that order. David Williams, Alejandro Sanchez, Patrick Holtzman, and then this battle, Østgaard, Job, and just off of that graphic right there is Max Benecke. Don't forget, your race winner in this one will be $1,000 richer with second and third place also getting prize money in this feature race. So there's more than just points at play here. There's a little bit of cold hard cash for those drivers, but we'll stay on board with Sebastian Job. Then is going into turn number 5 here, Connery. He's been stuck behind Tommy for quite a while. He'll be starting to think, I need to make a move and make it happen now.
Yeah, that is going to be the aim for Sebastian Job right now. Of course, he has been has been on the unfortunate side of an incident already, and looks to try and get involved here with Tommy Østgaard, the Norwegian, coming through the Dunlop curve. You just see the twitch on the exit of the corner that Sebastian Job had to manage, and now up through the Schumacher S. Can't really do much coming through here. Just look to get the best run possible and then have a look maybe into turn 11. You can see the body language of Job's car means that he is definitely looking for every single opportunity to try and slot himself through, but Østgaard's putting his car in all of the right positions for now. A little bit further back, you do have a bit of a train as well, involving a good couple of cars here. If I have to cycle myself all the way back to this one, we're on board with Jamie Fluke right now as he tries to tag onto the back of the train ahead of him, involving Sedgwick, Carroll, etc. So a couple of bits of action going on out there on circuit. A good couple of different places. 3 minutes to go here, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. These drivers still battling out. They still want to get the points here in this championship, because points mean positions in a future series as well. Sedgwick is trying to make moves on Graham Carroll, and ahead of them you saw tyre smoke, and that's from the battle ahead of them, because we've got side-by-side action just in front, and that's Sebastian Job, Benecke and Østgaard as well ahead of them. We could keep on seeing the tyre smoke, and that's why Sebastian Job has made it through finally in the arena section. And here comes Benecke. He doesn't want to hang around. He wants to tag onto the back of Job here, try and make up another position. Contact between the two of them. Off the track goes Benecke. How does it keep it in a straight line? But here comes Jeremy Bootloop now. Another man trying to make moves, and that's going to drop Benecke down a position here as they go into the Dunlop hairpin. Drama for Benecke near the end of the race. That could have turned out so much worse than it was, but in the end of the day, Benecke loses the position there, Connery.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see the replay up on screen. You can see the door budge in between the Red Bull and the Coanda car going through turn 1, and similarly so door rubbing coming through turn 2, as well as Benecke tries to file his way through on whoever will be the victor in this particular battle. As you can see, he follows the Red Bull Racing Esports car through on the inside for 3, outside for 4. Isn't really ideal though, as Østgaard slots himself ahead, and now Benecke, desperate for points in this championship, looks around the outside at the left. He's very much entitled to do so, but door barging on the exit is going to put him behind just a little bit here. He's still on the live pictures, very much involved in this battle, so I think now tempers will start to flare with a minute to go.
It's to start the final lap then. It's Joshua Rodgers in the lead by 1.1 seconds ahead of Jared Philsell. Philsell's coming under pressure from Mitchell de Jong, who's in second and third place. We see the battle with Benecke still going on here into turn number 1. And, well, these Coanda cars are bullying him about on the track. He has to get on the brakes mid-corner, does Benecke. And this is all getting a little bit desperate here through the arena section. Benecke down the inside, tries to throw his nose in there. That's scared Bootloop off the track. They're almost pushing each other, door banging, but Benecke does make it back ahead up into 9th place. Bootloop has a look down the inside. That's not going to happen there, but Benecke has to go really defensive into turn number 6. On the exit now, he gets on the power. He pulls away from Bootloop for the time being, so he can just look forward a little bit, but I don't think he'll be gaining enough of position here. But well, you can see the leaders up, the top 3 up on your the left-hand side of your screen as they're heading towards the end of the lap as well. So those drivers have sorted themselves out, and well, Joshua Rodgers, It's a little bit of a questionable one that got him into second place. The move for the lead, though, wasn't questionable at all as he's coming through the kink in towards the chicane for the final time. You've got Phil Sell and De Jong behind battling it out, but it's going to be Josh Rodgers, the Australian, coming into the final corner once again, and it's going to be another Australian who will take a win, and it's going to be 3 feature race wins for Josh Rodgers across the line here in the Porsche Esports Supercup. What a win, $1,000 richer ahead of Jared Filsell. Mitchell de Jong wasn't able to finish it off in 3rd place. Williams 4th ahead of Alejandro Sanchez. Rest of your field are coming across the line, and they've been battling all the way to the end in this one. But what a way to finish this one off with battling all the way through. Benecke will feel a little bit hard done by that little bit of robust driving, shall we say, in earlier on this lap. But yeah, definitely these drivers have put on one heck of a show in this feature race. So let's go and take you through your final standings then in the feature race of the Porsche Esports Super Cup from the Nurburgring. And it is Joshua Rodgers who takes the race win ahead of Jared Filsell by 1.4 seconds. Filsell holding on to that second ahead of Mitchell de Jong, the American. So it's an Australians 1 and 2 with the American 3rd. David Williams 4th place. He was pretty much on his own for most of that one, ahead of Alejandro Sanchez. Patrick Holtzman in 6th. Good drive from him, started in 10th. Sebastian Job, he'll be disappointed with that and really frustrated with that one, down in 7th place. Tommy Erstgaard 8th ahead of Max Benecke in 9th, and Jeremy Bootloop rounds out your top 10. And Gregor Hutu, 11th place where he started. Graham Carroll moved forward through the field, 17th to 12th, ahead of Cedric again, following him through the field. Jeremy Fluke up to 14th in that one at the end, ahead of Moritz Lerner, the biggest mover out of your field there. Kevin Ellis Jr. 16th, ahead of Thomas Tatela. Antoine Hijlan, Niles Kush, and Bobby Zelensky round out your top 20. Then further down, Sebastian Dunkel was 21st ahead of Marcus Jensen 22nd. Alexander Thebe 23rd ahead of the close battle of Martin Kroenke and Ilka Harpala. Look at how much that Kroenke dropped down the order there in that one. Kazuki Mishima had a few spins, so that meant he was 26th ahead of Dion Verges. And then cars that did not finish: Ricardo Castrolado, Pachelis Georges, should I say, Marty Piatella and Yao Vaz. But Connery, a few talking points in that race. It was certainly certainly one that got a little bit aggressive, shall we say.
Yeah, very, very aggressive, and you simply do have to understand the mentality here for drivers like Maximilian Benecke and everyone else at the front of the field, where when it comes to trying to get those overtakes done with cars that are making it very, very difficult for you to be able to do so. And of course, they are very well within their rights to defend in a pretty aggressive fashion from cars behind. But when it's not trying to benefit you, but trying to benefit your teammates, then that's a little bit hard one to take. I think everyone here wants to see close racing and close and fair racing between championship competitors and non-championship competitors alike. It's just I very much disagree with the way Coando went about this race, even though they are completely free in the rules to do so.
I mean, that's it. We've mentioned it in previous rounds, of course, that this championship, it's not a team championship. It is very much an individual championship. It's just that because there's quite a number of drivers through teammates here for the rest of the time that they're racing in events and in championships, they're going to end up helping their friends out and helping to them get back up through the field. But surely this is something that we're going to be able to discuss for quite a while here, Will.
Indeed so there, Paul. So, welcome back here, ladies and gentlemen, on Racesport TV. First of all, congratulations to Joshua Rodgers, $1,000 richer here by winning the feature race here today. But you're completely right, Paul. The role of teammates, you've seen it in the eNASCAR Peak Anniversary Series, you've seen it in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, the VRS GTI Racing World Championship. We're seeing it again here in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Even though there are no team orders in Coanda, the thing to note is the fact that if you've got such a big stable of drivers who are fast, then if a driver has a qualifying penalty, has a slow start, has a crash early on, it means that it becomes a lot harder for them to negotiate a number of drivers on the same team.
Yeah, it's certainly, but the fact that they've been able to pack out this grid, and we saw it with the results from the opening race, the sprint race here, how they're able to pack out quite a lot of the grid. It's denying others points opportunities here in this championship, and it's certainly working out for them, that's for sure. When you consider that going into this week's races, you had Joshua Rodgers, you had Mitchell de Jong, Martin Kroenke, and Tommy Østgaard, all in the top 10 of the standings here from that Coanda team. But I do mention, it is an individual championship as this one at the end of the day. It's just that those teammates, they'll help each other out.
Yeah, indeed so. We're going to talk to your first and second place drivers in just a couple of moments' time. There's a review of the results up on your screen. But Josh Rodgers here, Connery, I mean, he's done what many people before this race would have classified as a very difficult thing, to win in a race which has Max Benecke in the championship at the Nurburgring. But Benecke had that qualifying penalty. I will say, big props to Benecke, of course, for the fact he was able to get himself so far up the field. But Josh Rodgers, I mean, as soon as he got himself past Phil Sell, he basically just started to drive away.
Yeah, he was, a tenth or two of a second faster than everyone in the entire field. It was pretty ridiculous, was Joshua Rodgers' pace here today, but that seems to be at almost every single track he goes to at this point, so I don't think it should really surprise us anymore that he's able to do things like that. But yeah, just taking no credit away from his win today. Of course, needed a little bit of help doing so, and of course, we're still waiting on Stewart's results in terms of that incident with Sebastian Job that might cause them a little bit of trouble, but yeah, it's still a P1 at the end of the day. Whether that'll stay the case is, of course, to be seen, but it might just end up being a 4x in terms of the penalty points for Joshua Rodgers, and then we can look to the next race and see what happens there. But credit where credit is due, though. Just having a look at some of these drivers inside of the top 5, you have, for example, Alejandro Sanchez continuing on from an absolutely fantastic sprint race second place, able to stay inside that top 5, fifth place for the main race. So he has had a fantastic points haul here today. MSI Esports doing very well here, and I hope that's a sign of things to come. Of course, it was unfortunate what happened on the first lap with Sanchez. Just eyes too big for his stomach, it has to be said, with the move down the inside at turn 1, but still able to secure a top 5.
Yeah, a bit like me at a Golden Corral buffet. For all the American fans, will understand that one. Mitchell de Jong will understand that one when we talk to him in a few moments' time. There's your top 10. Again, up at the top of your screen. But it's worth noting here, Paul, I was doing the maths, of course, whilst you guys were commentating. And for Josh Rodgers, because he's had 2 clean races in a row, I've got to be careful the way I frame this. He could have afforded for that incident because, of course, once you've had the suspension from qualifying, you get 9 points and you get a one race suspension. However, for Josh Rodgers, he had no incidents at Watkins Glen, no incidents at Silverstone. So even if he does get penalty points for this one here today at the Nurburgring, he will still be able to race at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, that's a crucial thing there as well for the championship here. And so, well, it's nobody likes to see a championship decided in the stewards' room, but we've seen how both Joshua and Max have both been affected by those qualifying bans and how it's paid out for the two of them. So definitely it can affect how these championships turn out, but at the moment, right now, He's got that big W, that big win right there, $1,000 richer.
Yeah, but of course he has got to be careful. Any more incidents at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, he may well be in a situation where he couldn't take part in the last race of the season. We do, however, have Josh Rodgers here to talk to us on the iRacing Esports Network. And well, Josh, congratulations then on the victory in the feature race here today. It wasn't without some form of controversy, but take us through your race.
Yeah, no worries. Hey guys. Obviously lap 1, turn 1, in Nurburgring, it's always really, really tight, and it's always going to everything kind of bottles in. I think there was a little moment in turn 2, but all in all, for the most part, it was a nice, clean race. Obviously turn 1 with Sebi, it's not the way I want to see it. Every other time I raced him, and every other time I was racing everyone else, it was always clean. There was no malice in it. I'm not really sure what happened. At least looking back at it, there wasn't. There was about a metre between our cars, but at the end of the day, that's not how I like to see it finish. So apologies on that, but all in all, it's good for the championship, and we'll see what the next round brings.
We saw you get the advantage, of course, over Jared Phil-Sell about 2/3 of the way through the race. How hard was it in terms of overtaking here today, and how hard was it in terms of working through that Mercedes-Benz arena?
Yeah, that was one of the more challenging sections, mainly because at least I felt like our car was quite strong in the slower corners. So it was very, very challenging to make sure that you can still set up that exit, because obviously it's quite difficult, or quite easy, to defend in that sector just by slowing it up a little bit more on the apex. So trying to get those runs off the corners was a little bit more challenging. Being a track with some long straights and some big hairpins, you'd think it would be wouldn't be too difficult to pass, but obviously it's a little bit challenging, like most of the other tracks on the schedule, which does provide good racing, but and as well, when you see the different setup options, different wing angles, rake, etc., it really kind of throws a curveball in there. So the arena for sure was a challenging section, but the last chicane as well was another one of those areas.
We talked quite heavily at the start of our post-race coverage about the fact that you've got so many Commando Sim Sports drivers in the field who quite often finish all the races makes it a bit of a buffer for you if one of your competitors has a qualifying suspension. How much has this Commando family helped you in terms of the season so far? And do you think that as we enter the last 2 rounds of the season, you have to rely on them as much as you have to rely on yourself?
Interesting question. To be honest, no. Sure, in the lead up to the race, all the effort that's put in from every single member in the team does help. It all kind of collects together. But in the race, we're all our separate drivers. I don't think, no.
Okay, but of course, next time out, we're going to go to a very different track to what we've seen for the last couple of rounds. Going to head ourselves to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It's a very, very narrow track, especially as you work yourself up the hill through turn number 6 into the corkscrew. You've got yourself potentially some incident points coming up. Of course, I'm not a steward, so I can't say that one. But going into that penultimate round of the championship, if you do get a penalty point from here today, how much is that going to be playing in your mind in terms of the way you race in the penultimate round of the championship?
Obviously, you do have to take it a little bit more cautiously, but a track like that, it's going to be really, really challenging to pass anyway. So, honestly, the incidents aren't playing on my mind. Obviously, they still have to be there, and I still have to think about it, but it's not going to change, it's not going to really majorly impact how hard I push in a race. But obviously, it does have to be on the back of your mind, but just because the track's a little bit different doesn't mean you're always going to get more penalties.
Of course, great race here today, regardless. Getting yourself the victory here in terms of the feature race here in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Of course, this isn't going to be the last time we see you in the Nurburgring this season. You're going to head yourself up to some Racing Expo, take part in the digital ADAC Digital 500 with Mitchell de Jong. Before we let you go, a couple of thoughts about that.
Obviously really, really looking forward to the expo. Haven't been there before, so from what I've heard, it's always a really, really good experience and a great kind of community aspect for that event. And obviously pairing up with Mitchell should be quite nice. No, all in all, yeah, certainly looking forward to it, and meeting all the guys that we race with on a regular basis and get to talk to like this.
Well, before I let you go, shout out sponsors. Who gets it done for you, Josh?
No worries. As always, massive thanks to everyone in the team for all the effort they put in. It's not something that anyone can do without the team behind them, and it's obviously a huge team effort for us. Of course, Virtual Racing School, FeedTech, SimQuip, and Designs, JRT, you guys for the broadcast, and obviously our spotters as well for all their input as well.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Josh Rodgers is your race winner here today in the feature race of the Porsche Esports Supercup. Jared Filsell comes home in the second place, and well, Jared, second place. You won the sprint race earlier on. You couldn't, unfortunately, get the victory in the feature race to make it a double header, but still, great result for that Apex Racing team here today.
Yeah, thanks for the interview, but yeah, to be honest, it was I'll take that any day of the week with the prep that we've put in this week. I've been a bit under the weather physically, and yeah, so to come away with second and some good points, I'll take that any day of the week. That's great.
Talking about the race, of course, the sprint race, you had yourself the race lead. There was battling going on around and behind you. The feature race, of course, starting on pole position by winning the sprint race. You saw a little bit of a challenge in the first couple of laps, of course. That first corner, when you had Alejandro Sanchez diving down your inside. What's your thoughts running through your head into that corner?
That he wasn't going to make the corner because I was borderline myself. So that was pretty easy switchback manoeuvre. Just being wary of if any others were coming down the inside. So no, that was pretty reasonable move there. Unlucky to Alejandro. He definitely had the pace on me in the sprint race. Just ran out of laps, unfortunately.
And in terms of when Joshua Rodgers got himself past through the traffic and got up behind you, were you thinking about trying to play a defensive game? We saw you take the inside line in towards turn one a couple of times, but were you thinking about trying to really push him for it, or is it just a case of getting the points, of course, and making sure that you get yourself good points all here today?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Just wanted points, to be honest, after my shambolic effort at Silverstone. So yeah, I wasn't really interested in battling him right to the death. So yeah, I was pretty happy with this finish on the podium.
Well, Apex Racing team, they've got themselves another good finish here in this series, and it's been a bit of a hallmark season for the Apex Racing team, of course, getting the first ever win in a World Championship Series event. You get yourself a second place finish here today. 2 rounds of the championship to go. You got WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca and Monza. 2 extraordinarily different tracks. Which one do you think your car's going to be better suited for?
I quite like Monza as a track, like driving any car, so I'd probably pick that one, but I think it's going to be pretty exciting, to be honest. Laguna Seca is a bit of a one-line racetrack, so it'll be pretty crucial for qualifying up the front, so hopefully we can take advantage of that, and yeah, should be a pretty exciting end to the season. I think I'm top 5 now, so that's pretty cool.
We saw you earlier on, just a random question. We saw you earlier on in qualifying. You were on track to set yourself another lap, but you pulled it off track. Was that because of recognising the fact that you might end up, in terms of the reverse grid, getting an advantage, or what mistake did you actually make in the lap itself?
I think I completed both laps. I'm not too sure, but
I might just be an idiot. I think I am an idiot.
Nah, yeah, there's no room for sandbagging here. It's so tight, this championship, so yeah, you gotta finish all the laps you can get.
Before I let you go, Jared, shout out sponsors, who gets it done?
Yeah, obviously Logitech G, with their fantastic support this season, speedcafe.com, as well as SDK Gaming with Apex guys running that. That's a fantastic software to get your hands on, as well as all the guys at Apex Racing Team for their efforts this week. I know I didn't pull my end of the bargain, but I'll thank them gracefully for the setup work.
Well, thank you very much there, Jared Filsell, coming home in second place here today. Next up, we have Mitchell de Jong. And well, Mitchell, you've basically been in battles pretty much for 45 minutes worth of racing here today. It's been a tough old weekend for you, but you come up here with some decent results.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with that. Like you said, it was a pretty intense race the entire time. The qualifying went well, but with the format the way it is, it kind of makes us really have to fight to get back. And yeah, just did the best to min-max it. You know, sprint race went decently for the short distance that it is. We were able to make some spots, and yeah, looking good for the main. Start was good, and you know, we had that little incident between the cars in front of me, so yeah, just tried to rebound from that, and you know, took advantage of some bad luck from others, and was happy with the pace. So third feels really good.
We saw you battling with teammates again here today, and of course we know the official line at Commander is the fact that you do not have team orders, but how hard do you guys actually race each other? Is it as if you're racing any other driver on track, or do you naturally give a bit more room because they are in purple, orange and white?
I would say it's only natural that you won't do anything that's too risky that you have a good chance of messing up or taking them out. I think that's the only difference. I don't think anyone from the team does that anyway to any other drivers. But you know, you do leave a little more respect. Sometimes to our detriment, because you know, like you saw at the last race between Josh and I at Silverstone at that long battle, it was a really good one. But I think we lost a bit of time from that. So it's hard to balance that. You know, racing them hard so that you don't lose time, but also making sure you're safe enough where you're not gonna take both of you out. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Next time out, we're at the home track for you in terms of the series. I actually remember seeing you racing a go-kart race at Fontana a couple of years ago, but in terms of this championship, it is going to be your home race. We head ourselves over to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It's a very different track from the Nurburgring. What is going to be your game plan heading into that event, knowing the fact that you've got to not only beat your teammate Rodgers, but actually beat him by some kind of big margins in order to make some headway going into Monza?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic. It's certainly cool that you know, we're kind of in that position where we can fight each other. We also have Max there, I think, too. I don't think he lost too much today, so we need to be kind of careful about how we do it. But that track will be all about qualifying. Obviously, it's unlikely that you'll see a whole lot of passing there unless a big mistake happens. So with that said, it's going to be an interesting one. On one hand, you want to have some really good pace, but on the other, you want to be P8. So you know, it's the tricky part. You know, I guess if you're like way faster, then it's a bit easy to figure out trying to get that P8 in the thing. But this championship's so close, it's really not possible to kind of have that much control. So, you know, we'll see. We'll just play it by ear. I'm just going to go do the best I can. I'd love to win a race before the season ends, and that's pretty much my goal.
We talk about pace, of course. We talk about qualifying. I know it's been one of the things the fans have talked about all season in terms of the inverse grid for the sprint race, which of course therefore makes the grid for the feature. Is there a possibility of you being able to, you and your team or other people being able to work to a delta lap time to get yourselves a better position in the race, knowing the fact, of course, you do get points to qualifying, but could be offset by you having the better position in the races?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we could have that much control over it, it would be pretty ideal for a situation like that. But you know, look at the qualifying times, and albeit it'll be, I'd expect it to be a little bit of a bigger gap there, just because it's quite a tricky track. But it's still so hard to have that much control over. You know, we're talking about less than a tenth in a minute and a half lap, or 2 minutes like here. So you know, yeah, I'd love to have that control, but pretty much it's not really possible.
Well, before we let you go, Mitchell, shout out sponsors, and when do I get my crate of zero calorie Red Bull?
First answer, Expo, and then secondary, yeah, of course, I'd love to thank everyone in the team for working hard on the car and week in and week out and in all the different series. Yeah, of course, all our spotters for keeping us together during the race, and yeah, our other partners, personally for me, Red Bull, and then our team partners, Virtual Racing School, N-Word Design, SimQuip, VTech, JRT, and of course you guys, RaceSpot, for putting on the event for us.
Well, thank you very much, Mitchell de Jong from Koan Sim Sports, coming home in third place. And before I go and talk to David Williams, Paul, I do want to talk a little bit about qualifying for the next race at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. On one hand, I remember that I think was it a Formula 2 race where everyone basically didn't end up setting a qualifying lap because everyone was trying to outdo each other.
Oh, now you're asking. That you've thrown that one on me, and I can't recall that one. So I'll have to bow down to your great knowledge that there was an event that happened like that. So yeah, it's a tricky track to set a qualifying lap at, because on the iRacing server it's so easy to just put a wheel on the dirt, and that's immediately giving you an instant point which invalidates your lap. So we could see a number of drivers actually not qualifying, not through choice, but through them pushing maybe a little bit too hard.
Yeah, and Connery, of course, there's two different versions of Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. You've got the school layout, which has got all the sleeping policemen red curbs, which remember we saw in the GTC Grand Touring Cup, which is, of course, on Friday nights here on RaceSpot TV and on the iRacing Esports Network. But it is smoother curbs at Laguna Seca, which gives the drivers a little bit of help, but Turn 6 in particular, it is my least favourite corner in all of motorsport. I think it's harder than any corner at the Nordschleife. I hate it more than any corner at Spa, any corner at Silverstone. I hate it even more than Turn 1 at Indy.
Yeah, there's a lot of hate going on around here. We'll have to try and counter that in some form or fashion. But yeah, that left-hand kink, which is the one I believe that you're talking about, just before you go down the corkscrew. Yeah, it's a place where you don't really have all that room for error, it has to be said, coming through there. Of course, if you clatter that curb on the inside a little bit too much, then you're basically going for a barrel roll for all intents and purposes. And if you overcook it a bit too much, then you're going to be sent off into the gravel. But then, if you take it a little bit too safe, then there's no guarantee anyone behind is going to do the same as well. So you can have a little bit of a stack up going through there from time to time. And then your troubles don't end, because then you have the corkscrew straight after it, which is one of the toughest corners in motorsports with the huge elevation change through there. So it's a potentially very sticky portion of the racetrack, especially when it comes to a first lap, when you have around about 35 cars trying to get through there at the same time.
Yeah, indeed. So before we move further, we have got David Williams to talk to. David, get yourself a really good position here today in the feature race in the Porsche Esports Supercup, and you get yourself 4th place, which, if I'm not very much mistaken, is your highest finish in the series so far.
Yeah, hey guys, it's good to be here finally, the first time this year. It is indeed my previous best was P7. And my best result in a world championship is well, in an individual world championship is 3rd, but that was many years ago. So it's the crazy thing is this series is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, last time at Silverstone, preparation was fairly similar, and it was by far my worst result of the season. I obviously retired from both races, and then here we are today. So yeah. It's mainly due to qualifying, I have to say. I finally got in the elusive top 8.
Talk me through the role of Koan Sim Sports in terms of the preparation for this event, because you've got a lot of drivers that take part in this. You've got yourselves 4 drivers actually who finish inside the top 10 here. 5 drivers who finish inside the top 10. It's a big team, but actually what we did also see here today is a lot of Koan drivers fighting with each other.
Yep, that is very true. I mean, in terms of preparation, obviously, I couldn't be in a better place. It's basically a sim racer's dream to be to have such quality teammates and to have so many people to push you along. But at the same time, this race was very difficult. The opening few laps of both races actually, because I was basically surrounded by championship contenders from my own team. It did make it very pressurized because I knew that I had to push because I obviously didn't want to ruin my own race, but at the same time I desperately didn't want to destroy anyone else's, especially those guys that are in the championship. I'm kind of out of contention now, so yeah, it works both ways.
We saw you let in one of each of the races one of your teammates pass. Talk about the not having the battles in terms of the championship get into your attention. So was it just a case of recognizing there's a bigger picture going on inside of your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I had Mitchell, Josh, both behind me, and I desperately didn't want to mess up there, and also Martin was in front of me as well. There was a few occasions where I sort of had the opportunity to go for moves myself. I think there was one in the first sprint where I had a chance to go up the inside of Seb, but then Josh was trying to do the same on me, and that was very hairy.
You are about 140 points safe in terms of keeping your license for next year in terms of the series. So heading to the last 2 rounds of the championship, what is going to be your main objective at Laguna Seca and at Monza?
Well, to be honest, I felt like this was a must-do-well race for me, because it's one of the few circuits where I feel that I can actually perform well at. Silverstone was the other one, and we know how that went. Laguna is definitely not a favourite track of mine. I completely agree with you. Turn 6 is an absolute nightmare. So I'm really not looking forward to that, but I'll try my best. And yeah, if I get in the top 8, we know that anything can happen.
Well, before I let you go, David, shout out sponsors. Who gets it done for you?
Well, firstly, thanks to Virtual Racing School and our other partners, VTech, SimQuip, and With Design, and everyone in the team, obviously, for the massive effort every single round. It's relentless. Just can't thank the other guys enough. And thanks to yourselves for the broadcast, as always.
Well, thank you very much, David Williamson. Good finish there. In fact, he's best finished in a World Championship event for many years. 4th place here today. And Paul, I know you've got to go. Connery and I will carry on talking for a couple more minutes. But in terms of the championship right now, Rodgers has managed to build up a huge advantage here by having a good showing both the sprint race and the feature race. He's now on 803 points to Max Benecke 716, Mitchell de Jong's 682, Sebastian Job 644. We are at the point, I can say almost, that Jared Fulsell and Patrick Holtzman are out of the championship. And, well, I asked Sebastian Job last time out whether or not he thought he could still get into the championship battle. I think it's almost a little bit of a stretch now for that Sebastian Job Red Bull Racing Esports on the 13 car.
Yeah, I do think, basically, I think this is a 3-horse race myself, and even then, it's going to be very difficult for the drivers to be able to catch Josh with an 87-point lead over Max Benecke, and these final two rounds. All Josh has to do is just get some really good points close to his competitors. That's all he needs to do. That's easier said than done, though, given that WeatherTech Laguna Seca is one of the trickiest tracks to race in. But let's not forget, most of these drivers did lap after lap after lap around this track to qualify for the Porsche Sim Racing Summit back in December. So this was one of the places where they had to do the hot laps. And if I recall, a certain Mr. Sebastian Job was one of the fastest. In fact, I think he was the fastest at the end of that particular hot lap competition. But hot lapping's one thing. Getting race results is what matters in this series. Josh, he's in a very good, solid position. He needs to keep his nose clean, finish around those championship rivals, and he'll be feeling very confident going into that final round.
And to carry on talking about Josh Rodgers for a moment here, Paul, the fact that Rodgers has now got a buffer He does not need to win the last 2 rounds of the championship. He probably needs to get a podium in both and it'll be good. You talk about that being easier said than done. I actually remember both Dario Franchitti and Scott Dixon, Team Ganassi drivers, having this predicament when actually as soon as you start racing for points, your race becomes a lot harder than if you're just go out there to win the race. And of course, Rodgers might have to be careful in terms of his penalty points in the last couple of rounds of the championship, so he cannot make moves like he did here today at the Nurburgring at either Laguna Seca, well, and or Monza. I assume the championship penalty points might be carried over to next season. But for Josh Rodgers, he's got the points lead, but he's not got it easy.
No, he doesn't. The pressure is on him, that's for sure. It really is on him to be able to cement himself in that position. The fact that he's built out that lead so far really he's taken advantage of Max Benecke picking up that penalty this time around. Max has done a fantastic job of minimising the drop-off in terms of points that could have potentially happened. He managed to avoid not finishing races at all as well in both races. So really, Max has put on a fantastic display here to be able to stay out of instance as well. So Max has got to be on the attack. Josh really, he needs to drive how he's been driving. He needs to drive as he normally does, but he'll have that nagging thing in the back of his head just saying, oh, we might not go for that move actually. I'd normally put my nose in there, but I won't this time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Paul. I know you've got to go, so thank you, of course, for lead comms here in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Connor, you and I are going to stick around for a few more minutes, and what I want to do is talk about Max Benecke. And Benecke, he had himself, well, not the easiest day, shall we say, in that car, number 11 machine, of course, that he drives in. But he was able to survive having that qualifying penalty, and he got himself a good race out of it.
I think the overall result here for Benecke is that he has done enough. That's what I'll say. He has done enough in this race to, not keep himself close to Joshua Rodgers. Of course, he's been able to extend that gap out pretty far at this point, but he's done enough so that we don't count him out of the championship for all intents and purposes. He is still there. And the gap, of course, is still less than 100 points between P1 and P2. And remember, last time that was over 100 points, Will, that was coming out of Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And we all know what happens to the next 2 race events that Joshua Rodgers went to. So, and we have 2 events to go. So, there's still the possibility that Joshua Rodgers might end up falling foul here in the final 2 rounds.
Yeah, and of course, one thing we haven't talked about in this somehow we've not talked about this entire broadcast is PRT and Team Redline a week ago had that partnership at the 24 Hours of Spa. Heading into the last couple of rounds of the championship and beyond, Team Redline, we saw them on our coverage here today a little bit. They've not had the greatest of seasons. Team PRT, Pure Racing Team, Benecke's been great, but actually the depth in numbers hasn't been as strong for that team. Are we potentially looking at, in the future, a PRT and Team Redline merger in order to try and challenge Coranda, mainly because of strength in numbers?
Maybe, but I believe there was someone else that made the point in the chat or on Twitter a little bit earlier on that said that Pure Racing Team do have the numbers and they do have the capable drivers to get into this series. It's just that they simply have not done so. Maximilian Benecke is pretty much the only one that's really made any sort of impact in this championship. And, when you think about other very good GT drivers for that Pure Racing Team outfit, you think about drivers like Maximilian Benecke. Where is he in this particular series? You look at Gianni Vecchio, for example, as well. We have I believe we do have Lauren Henrich in this series, but he hasn't really been able to make much of an impact at all. So I think it's less that Pure Racing Team need the numbers. I think they need the numbers that they do have to actually qualify themselves in.
Yeah, but when you've got 5 drivers for Coranda inside the top 10, that automatically makes things more difficult. And I'm not going to be crazy enough to suggest the PRT Red Bull alliance in the last 2 rounds of the championship. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But PRT and Redline, of course, and I will say, from what I heard from Dom Duhan after last week, he was nothing but smiles, apart from that moment when Verstappen, of course, had himself that issue with his pedals, shall we say, with 15 minutes of the race to go. And, of course, it doesn't matter how many drivers enter the series from a team. There is no limit to team participation. And what Commander's essentially done over the last 5 years, essentially, is they've been able to pick out drivers who are good, consistent, and able. And now they might not have all of the best drivers who are able to get race victories every single day, but we saw it in the iRacing Grand Prix World Championship Series in years gone by here, Connery, that inside of your top 10, there'd be 4 or 5 Commander drivers. And we're seeing it again in the Porsche Esports Supercup. So they've evidently got a formula that works. And of course, for every Commander driver that is consistent and able to finish inside the top 10, what it is a penalty for drivers who do get into the steward's office, who do have to have a race when they start from the rear, and at Laguna Seca, maybe even a driver who does not qualify because of the off tracks.
Yeah, well, with the team situation that you alluded to there, Will, I think it's. I was thinking about this a little bit while you were talking to the drivers in the driver interviews, and I was thinking, this is kind of a bit of a result of sim racing being as cheap as it is compared to real racing, you know, because for example, in real racing, if Coanda Sim Sports was a real team, they'd have to be forking out God knows how much money for, you know, 15 cars in this series, which wouldn't be in any way realistic at all. But yeah, it was just something that actually came into my mind about that, and I'm not entirely sure how to solve it, or even if it's a problem that needs to be solved in a way. We saw the whole draft system come into the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze series, for example, that, you know, has shaken things up a little bit in terms of how that series is run, but I'm not sure if that is the sort of thing that will actually work for racing like this. So I don't know. It's not really our decision. You know, that decision is completely out of our hands. That's with iRacing and where they want to take the series. But it's, all in all, it is still a very, very interesting discussion.
Yeah, and 3 of the top 4 teams have got supplementary incomes. Of course, you've got VRS, Virtual Racing School, who are the main sponsor of Commander Sim Sports. You've got the Pure Racing School, essentially. Their setup shop helping them out in terms of PRT, a supplementary income. Apex Racing Team for many years has had a driver academy. That's been a force of supplementary income for them. Of course, the 4th team that makes is Red Bull Racing Esports, and they just kind of have a billionaire.
Yeah, it helps when you have a multi-billion-dollar company behind you. That is for sure. And don't forget that you know, that was a big player in sort of that team becoming a thing is G2 Esports, for example. So it's you know, it's not just the multi-billion-dollar sponsor. They have some pretty good guys in the esports scene working behind the scenes for those guys as well. But yeah, it's. You know, this discussion will continue all the way until the next race, and perhaps after it as well. Let's just say that one. But you know, it's not something we can solve here. But it, you know, who knows what might be in store for next season, for example.
Yeah. Just very quickly talk about Sebastian Job. He didn't have a bad day by any stretch of the imagination. It just wasn't his best day, of course, after the highs he had in the last round at Silverstone when he got himself a double victory. But Seb is still there in terms of the chance of the championship, and we talk about Red Bull Racing Esports. You talked about G2 Esports, of course, and when they were G2 Esports, they were kind of a little bit like the 1999 BAR team, thinking they're going to win everything and actually not having anything at all to show in terms of the results. Now, Red Bull Racing Esports, so the first thing for me that I'm impressed about, Connery, is they've got stability. We joked off air about Patrick Holtzman. At one point, he was changing teams every 6 months, if that. They lured Sebastian Job away, of course, over to that stable early on. We actually just showing the spin there for Seb at the end of the race. Actually, no, that's not a spin for Seb at the end of the race. That's it was at the end of the race. I take that one back. But more importantly as well, Graham Carroll. He's a driver that was a part of Team Redline. He's been a driver who is on an Apex Racing team. But he seems, a lot of these drivers seem to have found a solid, stable home now. Strong and stable. We can say that now Theresa May is no longer in government. It's Prime Minister, at least. A strong and stable team at Red Bull Racing Esports.
Yeah, and that is very, very important for the future development of a team. You know, you can't be having drivers that only come into the team for one event and then decide to leave it and go on and find another group of guys to race with. I think the way that they're approaching this is very much in the correct way, and of course they have things going on outside of iRacing as well, and they seem pretty stable in terms of that particular department as well. So I'm fairly optimistic about the trajectory of Red Bull Racing Esports, and in a way, the more stable they become, the better the health of the sim racing scene will be. So because it shows that these teams with big sponsors, with big organizations behind them, can actually survive for a decent amount of time.
And final question I'm going to ask you here, Connery, is that going to be the future? Because we talk about self-sufficient teams like Coanda, like PRT, like ART, especially. And also, of course, Team Redline you can add into that mix because they've been going for God knows how many years and they've been sufficient. Of course, they got that sponsorship with Fnatic as well as stuff from Dom Duhan's side projects in there as well. But is that going to be the thing? Because we've seen Williams taking sponsorship and interest levels in 2 sim racing teams. We've seen ourselves, Red Bull, getting involved in terms of this and other series, in terms of the Porsche Esports Supercup with Red Bull Racing Esports. Is it going to be a case now of throwing money behind teams for success?
It could well be, and that becomes more and more of a thing as we get more eyeballs on what we do, and we can bring that to the NASCAR and NBC discussion that we have with the pre-Free Series guys, where that was on US national television, a lot of eyeballs on there, and the more eyeballs that you get, the more interested sponsors and big companies become in the scene. For example, Parker Kligerman's esports team, got sponsored from a pharmaceutical company for 5 figures for a sim racing team. That is absolutely ridiculous to think about. And if that's the trajectory that we're going on, then it's going to be actually very tough for some of these smaller and some of these smaller teams and some of these sort of driver-oriented teams to survive in that sort of climate, because for the longest time in sim racing, for 10, 15, 20 years or so, it's always been just a group of guys getting together racing. Of course, more recently, we've seen a couple more structured teams come to the forefront, so, with the likes of Coanda, Pure, etc., etc. But there will come a point where financially it would be more advisable to be able to use the money, use the resources from a bigger organization. Of course, we've had G2 Esports come in with all of their resources and piling it into sim racing. It's more of arguably a bit of a passion project of Danny Engels, who's the team manager for G2 Esports, being a absolutely huge racing fan. But over the next couple of years, we may be able to see a couple other esports teams follow suit. We've already had Flipside Tactics and Team Renegades get themselves involved in the Peak series, and at some point there may be some interest from teams like Cloud9, Team Liquids, NIP, Fnatic, for example. All these big names in esports might be wanting a piece of the pie at some point, and a lot of those teams have huge amounts of venture capital or whatever you want to call it behind them, and have team psychologists, have team nutritionists, fitness experts, etc., which can really bring out the last 1 to 5% out of a driver. And I think for a lot of drivers that will be invaluable.
Yeah, I'm just going to circle that little thing there. It didn't work very well, apologies. But last year, of course, we were at Sim Race Expo. I was actually staying in the Dorrant Hotel, which of course overlooks the track at the Nurburgring. Actually, probably I was the one person that was staying in that hotel, Connery, that didn't get the chance at all to see any racing as we look up above there into the Eiffel Mountains. But of course, we are back at Sim Racing Expo 2019. And it's going to be great because, of course, the Esports Arena is going to be taking place. We've got ourselves a Porsche Sim Racing Trophy taking place as well. Over 2 days' worth of action on Friday and Saturday. as well as the ADAC GT500, and other stuff that I won't talk about on the iRacing broadcast.
Yeah, of course, it's sim racing, not just for iRacing. Let's just say that one. But yeah, it should be an absolutely brilliant event. I had the pleasure to go last year and commentate on a good couple of races as well, and it was an absolutely brilliant experience. Just seeing everyone up there on stage and having the crowd element as well is always absolutely brilliant, and getting to put faces to names and voices that we usually see and hear in the sort of competitive sim racing world, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. I hope it's a thing that keeps growing year on year on year, and maybe becomes like a big world championship sort of place where a lot of the big sim racing companies actually have their finals there. That would be absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it seems to be going from strength to strength, and I guess we'll see some of you there this year.
Yeah, a lot to come in terms of sim racing stuff. Of course, we are part of the first ever iRacing event and first ever sim racing event on network TV in the USA. So if you missed that one, check it out on our Facebook page, facebook.com/RaceWhatTV. You can catch all the action there. The partnership between ourselves, PSR TV, and the guys over at NBCSN. Great race at Iowa. We'll be back, of course, at the Nurburgring. In fact, in a month's time, we'll be doing work. We'll be setting ourselves up, getting ready for Sim Racing Expo. And then we've also got more action to go on in Europe that I can't tell you about just yet, but when you do hear it, it'll be absolutely phenomenal, and we hope that you'll be a part of all of these big events here. RaceWhat TV, of course, we do our stuff here on a weekly basis here in terms of the iRacing World Championship Series, but we like to go out on location, so if you do want to come and say hello to us, feel free to do so. Just don't tell us anything that's wrong with our broadcast, honest. But that's all we've got time for here today at the Nurburgring from the Porsche Esports Supercup. And, well, Josh Rodgers needed to win this race here today to give himself the championship advantage heading to the last 2 rounds of the championship. We've got Laguna Seca coming up in a couple of weeks, and then Monza to round out your season. Max Benecke started down at the rear of your field because of the fact he had a qualifying penalty, as did Graham Carroll. They both managed to work their way through the field, but Benecke has taken a big hit in terms of the points. And it's Joshua Rodgers now who has the advantage in terms of the championship. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll be here live again on the iRacing Esports Network as we head to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. It actually isn't going to be in a couple of weeks' time. It's actually going to be a couple of months' time. We've got a bit of a break going on. It'll be September the 14th. We'll be back on air. And you can catch, of course, the last 2 rounds of the championship, as ever, here on the iRacing Esports Network. From Connery Maddock, from Paul Smith and myself, Will Vincent, thank you so much for watching our broadcast here today of the Porsche Esports Supercup. It is Josh Rodgers who has himself championship advantage as they take a bit of a series break. But we'll see you all next time at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. Goodbye from the Nurburgring.